Let's stand for the pledge.
And Lenape people. Please check out our agendas and our minutes and look at this list that we need your help growing to find new ways to support Indigenous communities.
So I'm going to add item number 3 to the consent agenda. Professor Andrea Frank's project with students at Sojourner Truth Park. And on the business agenda, we add the SUNY and Village of New Paltz project managing Valley River resources at the local municipal level. This is a project that we're working on with the Benjamin Center. And also on the business agenda, item number 9, add an item regarding the declaring a fire truck as surplus and accepting a bid regarding an auction. And that is it. I move to accept both the consent and business agendas as amended. All in favor? Aye. And I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then announcements. The first one we have listed here is the December Village Board meeting will be held on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month, the 6th and 20th of December. And there's a correction to the November 8th announcement. The 4th annual holiday Hoopla will take place on Saturday, December 9th from noon to 5, starting with a parade. And then it concludes on Huguenot Street, not Hasbrook Park. It's sponsored by the community wellness team from the town of New Paltz. Any other announcements from village board members?
Yeah, there's $16.25, and we're selling up. And Elton Library and Gardner Library boxes, as well as Lush, Ecosalon, Chroma, Gem, and Salon, and Shag. Festival Drive. That said, family of New Paltz is all set with menstrual hygiene products for likely a year, but they're always in need of financial donations. A lot of folks who used to donate on a periodical basis no longer do so. So if anyone out there has the means to donate any amount of cash to family, what they do is they help folks with housing, with bills, with a lot of things that are very necessary, and so many folks go to family for that help. So find yourself having extra bucks, donate.
Any other announcements from village board members?
So just want to give Millions Butterflies a big shout out for having a great bridge cleanup day on Monday. Thanks to all the people who came out and made it so the work was done before I even got to show up. So thank you for that. The Free Food Bridge, it's a resource available for everyone right outside this building at Village Hall, 25 Paddock Hill Avenue, for guidelines on how to donate food, you know, and the labeling rules and stuff. Check out millionsofbutterflies.org/free-food-bridge. And don't be shy about stopping by and grabbing what you need. Also, Narcan and other harm reduction services are available anywhere in Ulster County.
to anybody, thanks to Ellenville Regional's Project Rescue Program. You can text ERH Rescue to 21000, and they'll get back to you to basically link up to get you the materials you need, such as Narcan, drug test kits, sex kits, snort kits, stuff like that. The Never Use Alone hotline is important to save. It could save lives. 800-484-3731. And Narcan trains are always available online on opioidpreventionnp.org. And please save the date for the community's Kwanzaa celebration at the Margaret Wade Lewis House on December 30th.
It's not there?
It's not there?
No, it's going to be held at.
Oh, okay, so we'll save the date, December 30th at the church. I got it all wrong, but now it's corrected. And I think that's it for me for today.
Any other from board members? Okay, so let's jump into public comment. So we have a list of individuals. You're signing up. You're not first on the list, Matt. This is general public.
Yeah,
comment.
not about the
Right, so this is
unreasonable
general
increase.
public comment, and then we also have a public hearing, which remains open, and that is in specifically in regards to the proposed unreasonable rent increase law. So this list is general public comment. I'm good with all the above. Why don't we just go with the list then? So Steve Campanella, you're first on this list.
Have public comment about something.
So this is public comment. You can talk about anything you want.
Okay.
Including
Great. Have 3 minutes.
yeah. We don't have a hard time, but to answer that question, yeah, that would be great.
I will keep it to 3 minutes since we have several people, I imagine, this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board Trustees. A pleasure to see you again. Here to speak about the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, the possibility of declaring a housing crisis, excuse me, a housing emergency here in the village of New Paltz. Spoke about this last week. Wanted just to reiterate some of the same points I made, but also add some additional details. One thing I did, because I was curious as to what the rental market looked like in New Paltz, I cracked open Zillow this afternoon. I went ahead and looked and see what kinds of apartments were available. I counted a grand total of 7 apartments available in the village of New Paltz at the end of this month, November. Don't expect great turnover at this particular moment in time, given students aren't coming and going. Seems to be a pretty stable moment. If there are 7 apartments total, that strikes me that we have a major housing problem, especially given the price of these apartments. As I mentioned previously, I work as a tenured political science professor in that department on campus, and I can't afford to live here. I have colleagues who can't afford to live here either. We're all living in other places, not in New Paltz, not even in Ulster County. I live in Newburgh and Orange County. In fact, that's where I've been priced out into. So those points, again, I think suggest that we have a major housing problem and something needs to be done about that. I also know, I believe a vacancy study has been completed, and the vacancy study percentage indicates that there's a vacancy rate of 4.9%. That's under the state mandated 5% needed to declare a housing emergency. And so this strikes me as a good legal reason for the village board to declare that housing emergency. I believe there may be some controversy about late submissions. I'll only note here that it's important to complete certain requests made by the villages, by various landowners regarding the vacancy study, to complete those things on time. Certainly someone might say, well, a late submission came in and that adjusted the numbers. We can fudge the numbers and take and I think someone has mentioned the number of 5.1%. I've heard is now the new one because of a late submission. Take the average, right? 4.9 and 5.1, we're still at 5.0. there's still a housing crisis here in this town. And ETPA won't solve that entirely, but it will go a long way to ensuring that buildings such as New Falls Commons, Southside are going to remain affordable when the village board hopefully declares that housing emergency, creates a rent guidelines board. My students need places to live in this town because they create its economy. And ultimately, that's what this place stands on. That's what makes this village thrive. If I can't live here and they can't afford to live here, there's not going to be much left except for rich New York City people who come up on the weekends. And I don't know if that's the village that you want to govern and that your voters want to live in. So I would encourage you once again to consider declaring the housing emergency, activate the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. And I also very much support the unreasonable rent increase law as well. ETPA is just close to my heart in particular. I've been working on that as well in other localities. I'll stop there and thank you for your time as always. Appreciate it.
Next on this list, Tim Welsh.
I'm here to speak for all the same points that Stephen just pointed out. I'll keep it even shorter than him. I just wanted to point to recent as of this week in the Wall Street Journal that pointed out that with mortgage rates being what they are, many people, such as myself, who are homeowners in New Paltz, couldn't afford to move if we wanted to because interest rates, I have locked in an interest rate that I can't afford to give up, which suggests to me that in addition to not having student turnover for rentals, there will be fewer homes on the market in the near future, even fewer than there have been over the last few years, meaning that it'll be ripe for rent increases to take place. And people can't buy homes, they all need to rent. And, you know, if you are someone who subscribes to the market theory, that rent increases will go up. Adding on to the numbers that Stephen just pointed out, the condition of already having below 5% available stock and market pressures to increase rents, I think we'll see a continuation of what we already see in New Falls, which is houses that are bought by sometimes out of town landlords, like the house across the street from me, and have anywhere from 6 to 10 students in them, often with 6 to 10 cars parked, piled in, because that's the only way that they can afford to, rent in the village of New Paltz. I agree that students are the lifeblood of this community and this economy and the year-round economy, not just the weekend economy. And if we want to provide them safe places to live that also don't gender sort of disgruntlement of their neighbors who don't maybe want to have a house with overflowing garbage because there's so many people having it piled into a small place, I think we should, as a community, support both the emergency rent laws that Steve pointed out and unreasonable rent increase laws so that we can deal with these problems proactively rather than wait until the crisis gets worse. I look forward to hearing the rest of the community's comments on this.
Thanks. Harry Dolan.
For having us. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of an item that's on your agenda in the business agenda regarding Chapter 32 of the village ordinance, which is the Affordable Housing Ordinance. I'm the chairman of the Housing Affordable Board, and the board has put forth a proposal to you all for your consideration to try and do something to increase the number of affordable units authorized in the village under that ordinance. Right now, as you may or may not be aware, there's only 7. And I can tell you that the waiting list under the village ordinance exceeds 100 people, 100 families. I know that tonight is only a consideration of authorizing a public hearing. I hope you can see your way to vote in favor of that and let everyone have their say about revising that ordinance. I think the record shows the ordinance was done in 2015. I don't believe it's ever been changed. Obviously, the market has changed dramatically. Not to bury you with statistics, but let me just give you one. And I think it's been in the last couple of weeks, the Department of Housing and Urban Development changed the market rate rents in Ulster County by 14% in 1 year, by 14%. We're the second highest county in the entire state. Affordable housing is a problem, and hopefully you can see your way to begin to address it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
Harry,
time.
I have a question for you. So the board made the suggestion to increase the requirement for between 10 and 20 units at 10%. So if there are 21 or more units, your suggestion was to increase it to 15%. So I added an additional wrinkle about, creating a tiered system as a percentage of MHI to actually make it, because I think what's interesting about how the law is currently written, it's at or below 60% of the county MHI adjusted for family size. So then we put in half would be at or below 40%, and then the other half would be at or below 80%. And just curious if you had, because speaking with affordable housing experts over the years, my understanding is that was a limitation of our law. So that's why I included that as an edit, like a friendly modification to what the board was suggesting. Curious if you had thoughts on that.
I would think the board would completely support that. I personally support it, absolutely. It has been a problem. Right now, the way the formula works for a family of two, again, not to bury ourselves in numbers, but for a family of two, if they have an income at 60%, the vast majority of our applicants don't have an income anywhere near 60%. We're at 40%, 30%. But if they were at 60%, the rent, according to our formula in our ordinance, would work out to over 33% of their monthly income. The old standard, and I say it's old because it does go back into the 1960s. It's not a law. I've stressed that many, many times. The number that you often hear is individuals should pay no more than 30% of their income towards shelter. Now that can be a mortgage, taxes, insurance, or it can be rent, utilities, whatever it is. Our ordinance, if a person is at that 60%, they are paying more in rent than the 30% standard. If we can lower that to 40 for some, great. If we can raise it to 80 for some, great. Yes, it'll help. Thank you.
Thank you for your.
Vivian now Spencer.
Hello, thank you board for having me today. I'm Vivian Canals Frenzer. As you can tell, I'm a student from SUNY New Paltz. And I'm here today for my support of declaring a housing emergency, Tenants Protection Act. I'm a sophomore. I live on campus. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not looking into housing off campus. Most people who are at New Paltz are, and it is very, very grim. I have friends that currently live off campus, very dear friends of mine who I've personally seen start crying because they were not able to afford rent. These people work full-time jobs above minimum wage. They are also full-time students. They have barely any time. And I think it is unfortunate and also shameful that people who are active members of this community actively putting 40 hours more, 60, 80 into working jobs in this community, both during school year and off school year, should have to break down because they can't afford to split it between 8 ways, and there's 7 other roommates, and it's insane. And I know you feel the same way, which is exactly why I am here. I've actually talked to a lot of old people who went to New Paltz.
30-year-olds.
We're like 25, but you know, who have went to school at New Paltz decades ago, and they said that they moved to New Paltz because they went to school here, and that was a lot of how people came to love this place, and that doesn't happen anymore. There are many students that I know, many friends, many acquaintances that want to live off campus even after they're done with their school, their education, but they simply can't because it's just impossible. And I know I have friends who wanted to go to New Paltz, but unfortunately could not because they saw how expensive the housing around here was and simply decided against it. And so if you want, you know, if you want people who full-time employers of this community, people who will stay in New Paltz after they graduate, people who are currently getting an education, staying here, declare an emergency. It is a necessity, and I know you can all agree on this. Thank you so much for your time.
Eckert.
I'm also a veteran in New Paltz. I'm not a student. I'm from New Paltz. My whole family's been here for generations. We go back to the Huguenots, which isn't always a point of pride for certain reasons. But I would love to stay in New Paltz, and I live here with my partner. And right now we live in the New Paltz Gardens apartment, and we pay $1,800 a month for a one-bedroom. And it's not a nice one-bedroom, I have to be honest. I can hear everything my neighbors say. It's like a play every day, and there's a hole in our bathroom ceiling they cover with drop-down tiles. And sometimes when the town shuts off the water, if they turn it back on too quickly, it'll burst a pipe in our wall, and I have to call somebody to come fix my kitchen sink, which is leaking. $1,800 a month. And I've lived in New York City for a little bit. That's where I went to school. And that was about what I was paying in New York City to live in Brooklyn. And New Paltz is wonderful, it's lovely, it's great, but it's not New York City. The jobs don't pay as well as New York City. But having to pay that much towards rent with how the job situation is here, it's just not sustainable. So I see myself having to leave. I can't stay in New Paltz long term. Probably sometime in the next 5 years, I'm going to have to leave to find an apartment complex that is rent stabilized or rent controlled. And that's unfortunate. I think that New Paltz is in serious danger of chasing away the community that makes living here great. I know every time I'm out and about, I'll run into like, you know, my middle school math teacher, and she'll be like, "Oh, hi, Brim," right? And it's a shame that, you know, I'm not going to have that kind of community once I inevitably have to. My husband and I are artists also, and that's always like starving artists, but we make good money because we have jobs from the city. But I don't know how other people do it. So I just came to say that we really desperately rent control, rent stabilization, and rent freeze something, because my rent goes up by $100 basically every year, and I don't want to be paying $2,000 a month in rent for a one-bedroom. So that's it.
Thank you. Ashley Bedell.
I am a student at SUNY New Paltz. I'm currently a senior. I am studying environmental studies and urban planning, so having an interest in those two subjects intersecting both in our communities and on an international scale really interests me. So this problem, I just wanted to come here and, you know, speak my piece. So I have lived on campus for the past 3 years, and each year I really want to move off of campus. My want only increases, but the opportunity to do so slowly declines. With the prices keep going up, it's just kind of impossible to find any units. Like it was said earlier, 7 units, it's crazy. Students and working class people are drowning, struggling to pay rent with increasing rates of rents, but the wages don't increase at the same time. So it's really hard to pay. The vacancies in available apartments are shrinking, and they're not even in really good condition. I have personal, really good friends that live with mold or, you know, bathroom problems, or landlords that don't really do their jobs in a timely manner and are paying extreme, like $2,000 for a bedroom, for example. So I believe New Paltz is facing an intense housing crisis, and the study that came out, 4.9%. I think that we should have a hearing to declare and implement the law. So I urge the village board to schedule a hearing as soon as possible. Thank you.
And just point of information, if you're witnessing or friends are witnessing unsafe or unhealthy conditions, you can call our building department because there may be a code violation.
Yeah, some of renters don't really know or are uninformed. And even if they do call, it's a slow response.
And it's frightening to think that you might retaliate.
Yeah. So I feel like if we implement this law, it will help, some of those issues. Thank you.
Andrew Hiller.
Hey all. Dave Steve at New Paltz. I organize in New Paltz with Mid-Hudson Valley DSA. I want to really thank the board for moving quickly to complete the vacancy study and want to urge you to immediately schedule a hearing and vote to declare a housing emergency in the village of New Paltz. As you're hearing tonight, New Paltz tenants are in crisis. There is no time to waste. There have already been 54 eviction filings in New Paltz this year. Rents here are rising much faster than wages and tenants can't keep up. According to I'm going to give you more statistics. According to the Center for Housing Solutions and Community Initiatives, from 2022 to 2023, wages for Ulster County residents increased 5%, while rents increased 10%. Ulster County residents making an average hourly wage are making an hourly wage of $14.50, but the Center for Housing Solutions calculates that in order to afford a one-bedroom apartment at fair market rent, they would need to be making $22.21 an hour, so about a third more than the average wage, which is crazy. A single parent would need $28.21 for a two-bedroom. Put another way, in order to afford a one-bedroom apartment at fair market rent, typical Ulster County resident would need to work 61 hours a week. I was fortunate enough to be a rent-stabilized tenant under the ETPA for 23 years in Brooklyn before returning to the Hudson Valley. The extreme rent hikes in New Paltz that we're seeing now began decades earlier in Brooklyn. In my neighborhood, when the rent increases started to hit, wave after wave of working class tenants were displaced. Once a working class community is displaced, you can't just put it back together. It's just gone forever. And we've already seen a good bit of displacement here in New Paltz, and it's only getting worse. So it's critical that you act decisively to make sure rents remain affordable for working class people here. The massive rent increases we're seeing now are not happening because landlords have suddenly decided, en masse, to improve the properties they own with expensive renovations. I know costs have increased for both landlords and tenants, but rents are far outpacing the general rate of inflation. Rents are increasing because lots of people want to live here and the supply of housing is limited. So landlords know they can charge as much as they want, and many of them do. We absolutely should fight for the tools we need to build hundreds of thousands of units of social housing across the state, and especially here in New Paltz. But that's a long-term project, years in the making, and New Paltz tenants are being displaced right now. Rent stabilization is not a panacea, but it's a critical first step. The ETPA is the gold standard when it comes to tenant protections in New York State. And the guarantee of a lease renewal is a really critical component of the protection it provides. It gives tenants the security of knowing they can stay in their homes, which in turn builds stable communities. Without protections like ETPA, just as we were just discussing, if a tenant complains, the landlord can simply choose not to renew their lease without any cause whatsoever. The guarantee of a lease renewal gives tenants the power to organize and fight for improvements. And not surprisingly, studies have shown that apartments with tenant protections are actually better maintained, despite whatever scaremongering you might hear from landlords on the subject. I've heard landlords come before this body and claim that the ETPA led to mass disinvestment and abandonment of buildings in New York in the 70s. That's just not even close to accurate. Various forms of rent control existed in New York State and other states across the country since the 20s without epidemics of abandoned buildings. Abandoned homes in the 70s in New York City were a byproduct of a historic fiscal crisis provoked by broad-scale deindustrialization and a racist federally subsidized suburbanization scheme. It's pretty well documented. Landlords love to tell you that ETPA will destroy all that's good and holy, but it's been in effect in downstate counties for a half century, and it's kept millions of people like me in their homes and in their communities. So please protect New Paltz renters from evictions and unfair rent hikes by opting in as soon as possible. Thanks.
Mary Hornbuckle.
My name is Mary Hornbuckle, and I want to speak in favor of declaring a housing emergency and opting into the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. And I want to share some of my experience with housing in New Paltz. I am a sophomore and I transferred here this semester. I would have preferred to live on campus, but living off campus is actually a lot more affordable. And that I was sort of forced to choose to live off campus because of that. But I didn't know that I was coming here until June, which meant my housing options for that fall were very limited, and I had to flex my budget to have a place to live. I'm paying $900 a month, which I believe is an unfair price for my accommodations. My ability to afford rent in New Paltz is entirely dependent on the refund I receive from financial aid. And this is determined by my parents' income, even though I am paying for college entirely on my own. This year, I received enough aid to not have to take out any loans, but I may need to borrow money in the spring just to pay rent. I also work part-time. I have no idea how much financial aid I'm going to receive next year, but there is pressure to sign a lease for next fall now because there are so few units available in New Paltz. It's like if you find one that's good, you have to take it. And it is uncomfortable to, I may have to sign a lease without having any idea what my income from financial aid is going to look like. Finding a place to live in the fall is really difficult, but it is even more difficult finding a place sooner than that. My housemate is a good friend of mine, and we have talked about wanting to move together maybe as soon as the spring semester. And just within the last couple of days, there has been a little bit of drama with our landlord that has made us want to move out as soon as possible. I've been checking multiple housing Facebook groups and the New Paltz off-campus housing resource page almost every day for the past few weeks. And I have not found anything that is like close to suitable for the spring for just one of us, let alone someplace that has 2 bedrooms. And I fear that we are going to be forced to stay somewhere for the duration of the school year that is not affordable and is also someplace that we are not, like, we don't feel totally emotionally safe because there's just nowhere to go. Because of this experience, I urge the village board to protect tenants from rising rents, evictions, and displacement by immediately declaring a housing emergency and opting into the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. Thank you.
Jenna Goldstein.
Organizer with more than that. We are grassroots organizing working class field to make sure that New York works for all of us. I regularly interact with tenants whose lives are improved and saved by the protections given from the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people who suffer without such protection. Those covered thrive under the protection from no cause eviction, unreasonable rent hikes, and build strong communities amongst our neighbors. I heard you encourage students to tell their friends to call the village department about unsafe living conditions. The fact is that tenants don't always know their rights and that they are scared of losing their housing. Tenant unions help remedy that. We need tenant protections for those people. If you want to see your community thrive, you must provide stable housing first. Several buildings in the village of New Paltz qualify for ETPA both in their vacancy and size this year built. I knocked 96 of those doors personally and heard firsthand how tenants are struggling to pay their rent, understanding the rent increases, while living in less than ideal conditions, like Brandon said earlier. By adopting ETPA, you are providing safety for your position, making New Paltz a true community and home to a variety of people that will exclude wealthy weekenders. ETPA does not drop the rent below market value. It just protects tenants from nefarious landlords or conditions. I urge you to talk to the voters who are tenants what their percentage of income is rent. I urge you to truly support the ability for this place to have emergency and obligation to address the housing crisis, opting into ETPA. Also, I want to address a comment such as the ETPA to vacancy rate under 5%. The actual language is not in excess of 5%, which means that anything under 5.9 constitutes an emergency. Thank you for your time. I look forward to speaking to you in the future and any questions on ETPA benefits and segments should.
Thank you, Jenna.
Kabira Gohar.
My name is Inka Urra Bodner. I am a New Paltz student. And I'm here to talk about the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. I live on campus, and if you've ever lived in the college dorm, you know that it's not a sustainable situation. The public restrooms alone are chaotic. In my personal experience, our ceiling leaks and we have black mold, so it's safe to say I'm interested in moving off campus. But I'm incapable of affording the current housing right now. Living in your own apartment allows us students to be prepared for life after college and our future. We as students depend on you to be our voices and to do everything in your power to ensure that we can continue to have the freedom to learn and grow without having to worry about a warm place to sleep. For this reason, I call on the village board to declare a housing crisis and opt into the Emergency Protection Act.
Leonard Loza.
There are several things I'd like to talk about. First of all, when the mayor asks everyone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, I appreciate that. Those that don't want to stand up, please walk outside the room, show us that courtesy. Second thing I would like to say is I am not in favor of the Moriello project. I don't believe it is something that we should just give them, whether it be the pencils in the DPW office or the new excavator, or the fact that they can increase the density to put so much more housing there, being within the village. We have paid for everything: sidewalks, streetlights, equipment, salaries, retirements, the list goes on. So there needs to be a compensation. Impact fees are illegal. We can't charge them an impact fee. The recreation fee is not going to cover the costs of them joining our village. So seriously, before the advocation of letting that happen, please give it some good consideration. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk to about has to do with the proposed rental regulation. I do believe it is not within your purview to do this. I will tell you, I spent $57,000 to have 11 North Oakland sided. At 8.5%, which I had to borrow that money from to do that, how much longer through the years to come am I going to not be allowed to adjust the rents? 16 Grove Street in the back, that building in the back definitely needs some treatment. It is not advantageous for me to do that if you're going to restrict my rents. Right now, I pay for lawn, snow, garbage, plug toilets, light bulbs. They get locked out. They call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. All of those things are given. They don't have to be given. They can be charged. It's not my doubt at all that a lawsuit will follow this. If in fact you want that challenge, I'm quite sure that we as the landlords in New Paltz are ready to do that. I just happened to type in on my phone to what it costs to live on campus. Graduate of New York resident, on or off campus. Fees, $14.54. Personal expenses.
I'm gonna let her sleep in here tonight, so I don't wake you guys up in the morning. So I gotta leave early, okay? We're putting on the
Who's that?
trap for the-
Please mute yourself if you're not here in person.
The housing cost, $10,000. The meals, as a freshman, you're obligated $5,400. That's roughly between $1,300 and $1,400 per month is what it's costing you. It is cheaper to live off campus. I can assure you of that. Thank you.
Kyla Cleary, Ariza.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Kayla Cleary Ariza, and I'm a second-year student at SUNY New Paltz. I'm here this evening to strongly advocate for the immediate recognition of a housing crisis in New Paltz and the urgent enactment of the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, accompanied by rent stabilization measures. The current state of housing affordability and stability in our community necessitates immediate action to protect the rights of tenants and ensure equitable access to secure and affordable housing for all residents. Declaring a housing crisis in New Paltz is not merely an acknowledgement of a problem, but a crucial step towards acknowledging the severity of this situation, addressing the urgent needs of our community members. This recognition will facilitate focused efforts to combat rising housing costs, displacement pressures, and the growing risk of homelessness faced by our residents. Enacting the ETPA and implementing rent stabilization measures are essential components to addressing this crisis. ETPA offers crucial protections against arbitrary rent hikes and unjust evictions, providing stability and security for renters in an increasingly volatile housing market. Rent stabilization measures in conjunction with ETPA ensure that housing remains affordable, preventing the displacement of long-term residents and fostering a sense of continuity within our community. Furthermore, declaring a housing crisis and implementing ETPA and rent stabilization measures align with our community's values of inclusivity and social justice. Access to stable and affordable housing is a fundamental human right, and these measures are necessary to ensure everyone, regardless of income, background, can live with dignity and security in New Paltz. Thank you for your time.
Matt Eiler. Matt Eiler.
How's everybody doing? Actually, mostly just here to listen to what everybody's saying, but I have a couple quick things to say. So, with the 4.9 or is it 5.1% vacancy, it seems like that's sort of right on the edge of whether you can declare a housing emergency under the state law. So I think that could get challenged. It seems like it's tight, especially under a scenario where we do have, as I said last time I was here, there's a lot of product probably coming online. Stuff is getting approved, several big deals. You know, the Moriello thing, which I have some concerns about too, but I think that's something like 700 beds. And I think there's only a population in the village or something like whatever, or right, you know, New Paltz's population is like 7,000 people or something. So we're already at 5% vacancy, you bring on 10% more beds. It seems like that would bring that percentage well higher and give people more options. And so, I mean, I think it might be prudent to let that play out a bit. And I also just want to make a sort of a general point, which is I'm in this market, obviously. I'm a real estate person. I'm working with investors all the time. We had an opportunity to build a small apartment building with like 8 units. We tried to pencil it out, and this isn't your fault at all. It's no one's fault, but it's the interest rates the way they are now. If you look, the interest rates, the operating costs, even at these high rents, and even in this case, we were going to get the land not for free, but it was going to be baked into the deal, and the person was going to get a piece of the deal to do that. So even without any land costs or carry on the land, we couldn't even pencil it. Even at these high rents, we could not make it work. And so again, hopefully interest rates will come down. Hopefully that will be alleviated. But just, you know, part of that cost is the cost of going through the whole planning board and everything, which I think we all agree that we want a town that has good zoning and has the proper things built in the right place. But there is a lot of regulation. taxes in general are fairly high here, even though Tim's done great and you have done a great job of keeping them flat in the village. So I'm just saying, as everything, like regulation sometimes has inadvertent knockoff effects. So adding a requirement to add more affordable housing may have the inadvertent effect, for example, of not getting things built at all, you know, because it barely, right now it doesn't pencil at all. But what we need, I think, is more supply. And I think that, I know that that's not a panacea either, but I think if you could get the vacancy rate up into, you know, 7, 8, 10%, I do think that would help bring down rents. I think that would help give tenants more options. So I just think it's important to be careful when introducing regulation like this. And as far as this housing emergency goes, I think that, you know, if we're right on the line, I think that's a little bit of a rash move. But I do appreciate that it is difficult for many of the people here.
Rich Lanzarone.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Just wanted to share some with you. So, as you may or may not be aware, so I represent, I'm the executive director of the Hudson Valley Property Owners Association. And, you know, we tried very hard to get the vacancy survey information, and we foiled it, and the village was just withholding the information beyond what was actually legal. We came within 4 days of taking you to court, and finally we got the information. And so we got the information, we looked at what you received, we did the math, it's shown right here. And I will point out that, you know, in the letter you sent, it's the first sentence says, as the owner of a building containing 6 or more units built before 1974, I will point out that in your list of properties that you surveyed, 49 North Chestnut Street is a 5-unit property. 2 Mohonk, it's a single family house, and they built 5 apartments behind it in 2012. It's not eligible. And 45 North Chestnut has 24 units, which if you looked at, first of all, you want to look at the building. But if you look at the county records, it was built in 1983. So even without making those corrections, in your survey, you are at 575 units, 30 vacancies. When you do the math, it's 5.2%. You are over 5%. Now, when you make the corrections, you're at 5.6%. So the numbers really don't lie. So you don't really have the ability to declare an emergency.
So you're a proponent of EPTA if, for instance, the vacancy rate was at 4%?
No, ETPA is
No,
very.
just yes or no.
No. So
Okay.
like the gentleman, there was a gentleman who said that like he doubted that that ETPA caused the destruction of hundreds of thousands of units in New York City in the 70s. But I don't know the age of the gentleman, but just from his appearance, I don't think he was there. I was there. I lived in New York City 50 years ago. I saw what happened. And actually what happened was that the New York State Legislature, after a few years, became very alarmed at what was happening in the destruction of what was previously good, sound housing as a result of abandonment. And they decided to like let up and give property owners the ability to deregulate apartments over time so that they could start gaining back some income so that they could have the money and the incentive to take care of their properties. That lesson seems to have been lost over time. And in 2019, the law was changed and basically eliminated all opportunities to decontrol. And so that's where we are. So I just also like to comment on your proposed outrageous rent law. So,
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but that public hearing's next. I don't know if you want to make your comment during that public hearing or. I didn't
yeah,
mean to
that's fine.
interrupt
Or I can
others.
do it now.
Right,
can do it now.
proceedings.
Like I said, it's pretty short and sweet. It's pretty short and sweet. So Ulster County, the village of New Paltz is in Ulster County. We're in the 3rd Judicial District. And we're under the supervision of the court in the 3rd Judicial District. And the appellate court in the 3rd Judicial District ruled that the law in that case was the City of Albany good cause eviction law, conflicted with state law and was superseded by state law, and therefore the local municipality did not have the ability to enact that law. And when you look at your law and you look at that decision, you can see that in the very wording of your proposed law is the very wording and the very aspects that were deemed illegal by the appellate division in the 3rd Department. And so that law, as it's currently drafted, it could not withstand a legal challenge. That's all I have to say. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Point of
it.
information, just want to let everyone know the actual study was a draft of it is on the agenda tonight for the first review for even the board and the public. So just want to make sure everyone knows that. Sorry to interrupt.
Do we have any public comment from folks who are zooming in? Oh, sorry, Bob, you absolutely are. Bob Gabrielli.
So, what do they say? Never follow kids act, New Paltz never follow Lenny Loza or Rich Lance Roan because they've said it all. So, and I do kind of owe you guys an apology. I last time we had a meeting, I said I used a wrong word, and I said condemned, which is a terrible word. I meant to say compelled. So I apologize if anyone took umbrage at my snowshoe or my mistake. But so someone said 30%. 30% is 30% for rent or a house. I'm a real estate broker. I have been a real estate broker for years. And when you qualify people for a mortgage, the federal government has guidelines for how much you should spend of your gross monthly income or annual income on the payment of what they call PITI, which is principal, interest, the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and that should be no more than 33%. And your entire budget maxes out at 42%. That's their guidelines suggesting. You can go over that. You can, and a lot of people do. Some people own Volkswagens and other people own Cadillacs. And they make the same amount of money. Right? So it's their choice. It's people's choice what they want to spend their money on, what they deem is more important than anything else. And I really, on a general level, I'm always concerned. I don't think the village should make laws that interfere with private people's private contract and their own regulations, their own responsibilities. I mean, it's the state constitution used to say that the state would never interfere with a private contract. But in 1913, we had the Triangle Waistcoat Factory. And so they said, oh, we need compulsory insurance. And so they passed the Workers' Compensation Act in 1913. Then they passed it again in 1915 because it was thrown out as being unconstitutional. In 1915, also in Washington, D.C., and Rich Lanzarone will tell you the caption, I forget what it was somebody in Bosch, who was it?
I'm sorry?
What was the caption for, the 1915 suit in Washington DC?
So Hirsch v. Block.
I'm sorry, Hirsch v. Block. The judge in that court, in the federal court, ruled that rent control was illegal. It was illegal, it was unconstitutional. But they said because it was for an emergency. Well, 1915, guess what? That was World War I. So I'm sorry to ramble.
It was an interesting ramble, though. Thank you.
What's that?
It was interesting.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks. Appreciate that. So I think the world of Lenny Loza. I do have to correct one thing he said, Lenny. I'm not correcting it, but Lenny was right when he said $10,466 for a 5-month rental at the college times 2, and then you can rent the 4 weeks in intercession at $43.25 each for 4 weeks is $1,211. So that's a monthly rent, $1,211 for intercession. And then they don't even know if they'll rent it to you at that amount or more for the summer. So it comes out to, my figures come a little different, but the thing Lenny didn't say is that 12,000, 1,200, 1,300 a month.
1,350 to 1,400.
1,350, that's for double occupancy. That's for doubling up. If you're worried.
You're not there during the summer.
That.
And the students are not there during the summer.
So if you're in, I didn't interrupt you, Mike. So if you're really worried about that, if you're worried about the high cost of living, double up, go live on the campus. They have vacancies now. I just called up today. They said, yeah, we have no waiting list. You can come on in. So that's the cost. The other thing is, we're talking about the 30%, we're talking about expenses. And Lenny Wilson said last time also, I have to keep referring to Lenny. He said, you know what? We can't go as a body to Tops and say, you must cap your rate for zucchini and all your other vegetables and your cereals. You can't cap anybody else. Why is it you can cap these people? These people who this law puts a burden of proof on the landlord. That's terrible. Somebody doesn't like their increase in rent, they can write a single note and says, dear village board, Tim, it's too high. Now it goes back and the landlord has the burden of proof. So it's not 50-50 anymore. Now that he's scrambling from the bottom of the barrel, he's at a great disadvantage, and he has to take time off from his business to go and answer go get a lawyer, go get legal briefs, do that kind of stuff. It's really not good. And this thing it creates economic hardships for landowners. It de-incentivizes repairs and, most importantly, renovations. Talk about renovations. What a beautiful village we have now. We had Toscani's is painted up red. They put in a new parking lot in the back. We've got lemon squeeze. We've got what's going on in Kontiki. The place is beautiful. I hate to say this, please don't take me wrong, but I don't want to be unfair to myself. I'm not going to be a liar. They did that without any government intervention. They didn't have anybody helping. They didn't cap rents. They didn't give them anything. That's their own money. I have to. So that's that. Who will be affected by a rent cap? Old ladies who need to rent a room. You guys have every rental property, every rental issue is under your control. And you're going to be affecting little old ladies who have a room to rent in their house because they need to make their ends meet. You're also going to get workers, and we have plenty of workers here who don't have retirements, they don't have 401ks, and they're depending on rental incomes for their living. And we're going to say, I'm sorry, buddy, but forget that 2 zucchinis, you're down to 1. And especially accessory dwelling units. You guys just passed a law. It's a terrific law. Now you can have an accessory dwelling unit on your property. But guess what? Spend the money, get it built, get it all fixed up. But wacko, you can't do anything with it. You can't increase that rent. Your investment just got screwed. And if a lot of people, look, I've been in real estate for a long time. I had other careers too, and I've always done it. My wife is a broker. We've worked together. I've seen a lot of stuff. I specialize in investment properties. This is de-incentivizing people to put money into investments. They don't want to come here if they don't know that they'll have an increase that runs parallel to cost of living. You say to a guy, well, you're going to have a capitalization rate 7%, but you know what? In a year or two, it might be down to 5. Maybe it'll go to 4. Maybe you'll be borrowing money at more interest than you're making on your property if you want to refinance and put that new roof on. It's horrible. People, I'm telling you now, Bob Gabrielli is telling you, I have had 2 occasions where people have said, I don't know about that rent control stuff. That's for true. Next. Look, I have to say this. I debated about it, but I'm going to say it. If you don't like it, too bad. I'm really concerned about the optics of what's going on in this town, in Kingston, in Beacon, and all that. There is a lobbyist corporation, a lobbyist company, I don't know what to call them, for the many. They've got a website, and they've got 19 people. They've got their pictures and their bios are on there, and these people represent officers or executive administrators of the organization. Of the 19, 16 are licensed lobbyists, professional licensed lobbyists, and they're licensed in San Francisco under the Tides Foundation. Tides Foundation, you know, is joint at the hip with George Soros.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yes, he donated $3.5 million to Tides. Yes. Okay. So anyway, so quoting a few things from their website. Here's one. It says, for too long, greedy corporations, billionaires, and political elites have rigged our country to work against us. Another section says, most groups either fight to win elections or laws. By doing both at the same time is how we win. I'm always afraid of politicians who have to win and fight. Why can't we just negotiate, expound, educate? We elect representatives who will fight for us inside the halls of power and organize our communities on the outside to hold them accountable. I want to talk about that for a second. Wow. I'll go fast.
A fair amount of time.
Okay, they're going to elect people, and then hold them accountable. Terry Ward said in Hudson Valley One magazine, November 14th of 2023, he said, quote, trustees, that's you guys, resisted a pressure campaign that included For the Many's political director, Bhagwan Raghavan, warning at the November 10, 2021 village meeting that they could all be replaced. Have you guys been intimidated? Have you been intimidated? One of the village board members is actually a member of For the Many. So we've got somebody who is, I don't know how they see themselves as a lobbyist. This is important. This is really big optics for what's going on here.
I was a lobbyist for a long time, and stopped being a lobbyist in the public interest in 2016 when I left that job to actually get a job at the Village of New Paltz when I was studying for my LSATs. I am not a lobbyist currently, and I actually am not allowed to do any lobbying in my day job. Not to interrupt you, just wanted to make sure that was clear to you.
Is this your first disclosure?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is not my first disclosure.
Okay.
We have ethics disclosures and all of that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just very, very worried about it, that you guys are maybe being infiltrated by a professional lobbying company and whatever. I mean, it's a serious concern, and I think if you really were professionals at being lobbyists, you would not laugh at something like that. Thank you. Oh, I have one last thing to say.
On the board at that time, and we weren't intimidated then. So please, don't, you know what I mean? Give us a little bit, give us a
Quick
little
last
bit of
thing,
credit.
15 seconds, go.
Last thing, Lenny Lowe's a terrific guy, fought for us in Vietnam. Did a lot of great things for this village. He paid for flags to be flown and think flowers to be put up. Unsung hero. My Uncle Bill was killed in Battle of the Bulge, a house in World War II. My dad has a congressional medal hangs up in my wall. My wife's father fought in World War II. He's a pilot, captain. And I'll tell you something, I agree with Lenny 1,000%. If you do not want to stand for the flag and respect those people that I just called off, my uncle, my dad, well, you don't have any respect for them.
Okay.
It's enough.
You should leave.
Any other? Okay, no. Anyone else want to make a public comment? No? Okay.
There's people online.
Oh, okay. Who would like on the line? Who has their hand up online? I can't see that screen.
I'm sure they're aware that they can do that.
Can you read the names?
Katie Hamill.
Katie Hamill, do you want to make a public comment?
Liz or Matt Elkin.
Liz or Matt Elkin?
Mark Gavigan.
Mark Gavigan?
We're gonna send a letter.
Okay, that's the Elkins. Michael Rohr, we got Michael Rohr's letter. It's here.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, you do have my letter, but when you go ahead and open the public hearing on the proposed law, we will go ahead and read that letter. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I do actually have a couple questions on the proposed law. Should we wait till you open the public hearing, or should I just ask those questions now?
So this is a time for public comment. It'd be fine if you wanted to make a public comment on the proposed law. There's a public hearing specifically for that, or you could wait. We're not going to answer questions tonight.
Okay, well, you were just dialoguing a little bit with those folks that just spoke. So I maybe if you would you just clarify the proposed local law regulating unreasonable or unconscionable rental increase, is that a full adoption of the ETPA law, or is it
No,
simply
totally separate.
Okay,
Two
but
totally different laws.
are you contemplating adoption of the ETPA full law?
Yes. That's part of the Housing Smart Communities program. It's one of the benchmarks to go through this process, which we're going through. And tonight is the first draft of the results of that, the study that's on the agenda as an agenda item.
I'm still confused.
It's not related to the unreasonable rent increase law that is public hearing, if that makes sense, or two separate.
No, actually it doesn't. I'm confused. So you have, as for public comment tonight, the local law regulating unreasonable or unconscionable rental increases in the village of New Paltz. However, many of the speakers refer to the ETPA law. So can you
Because
please—
that's on our agenda.
Wait, let me finish. Can you please let me finish? Can you please provide a distinction in the process? What is the process that you are doing? Are you providing, you're asking for public comment on the law, but you're also passing an ETPA law that has not been yet proposed?
Okay, so there are two different things. One is a public hearing that we have kept open on the law about unconscionable rent increases.
Right.
That is a public hearing that is ongoing. Please let me finish. That is a public hearing that is ongoing. That proposed law is linked in our agenda. Also on our agenda separately is a discussion of the ETPA as it relates to the first step which is the, looking at the data that we've gotten so far. So they're both listed on the agenda in two different places. And they're
Okay,
two different things.
but
People are talking about both things because they are related in that they both have to do with rent, but they're two different things.
okay, I'm glad, thank you so much for clarifying that. So there's not yet a public hearing on the ETPA.
Correct.
We will be deciding when that will be.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. But yes, I will go ahead and read the letter on my husband's behalf once you do formally open the public comment on the local law. Appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to make a public comment on something that's not related to the proposed unreasonable rent increase law?
Oh, Maggie, yes.
Come on.
Yeah.
Rich already made it.
Rich already made a comment. We're not doing multiple comments.
The other lobbyist room.
That's it.
Couldn't hear people when they were facing this way.
Thank you.
I'm Maggie Beve. I live in New Paltz for a long time. And I remember when you were doing the other law for
Good cause rental.
good cause rental. Yeah, and I'm gonna make the same comment I made then. I have a little apartment in New Paltz, right in the village, and we rented it because we felt we could eventually move in it. And I was concerned about what kind of legalities I would get into, with the understanding that, I think my rent is reasonable. I'm a reasonable person. Reasonableness is a very, is a term that doesn't really apply objectively. So what I said then, I think that one of the things you need to do with this law, and I'm going to say I really do support the idea of having some kind of law that limits people's rent. I'm happy with 5%. I will tell you that I'm not happy that Central Hudson could get 9% a year. I mean, they have an average, they can get 9% a year in
Or the New York
profits.
City DEP.
There you go. So, but I'm going to say that one of the reasons I'm concerned as a person who wants to rent to somebody and be reasonable, I think that, and I think most of us would want to be reasonable. I don't think the guidelines in there are going to be clear enough. And I think that you really need to have more clarity on what the guidelines are. All that information in there gives information in generic terms. And one judge may have a different interpretation of what's reasonable, and another may have another interpretation of what's reasonable. So I don't know if there's some kind of guiding principle that you can formulate in that will enable the judges themselves to make a decision about this. And once again, I want this law. I want this law, but I want it to really work for anybody, whether you're a student or you're not a student. So I would recommend that you really look into that more carefully to give guidance to the courts. And I suspect that the courts are going to get a lot of cases that they will have to deal with. And I think that each of us, whether you're a student, whether you're not a student, but if you're a tenant or not a tenant, you really do need a better understanding of what the guidelines are. So, I don't know if there's some kind of reference that you can provide in the documents that you've provided so far. I think that would be helpful to me and helpful to anybody, students, non-students, but anybody who's a tenant, anybody who's a landlord. Okay? But in principle, I do think we should really do something about rent control. Okay.
Thanks, Maggie. All right, what's next?
What are we doing now? Anyone else online, or should we just move into the public hearings? We have a public hearing. It's already open. We don't have to move to open it regarding unreasonable rent increase. So heard from several people about this proposed law. Is there anyone who has not spoken who wants to speak about this proposed law? Okay, let's continue to keep the public hearing open.
The person online wanted to speak.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, if you don't mind, I would like to read.
Tell us who you are.
So I'm Aileen Rohr, Michael Rohr's wife, and we earlier today submitted a letter to you all. But if you don't mind, I would like to just go ahead and read it into the public comment. And I will try not to take up too much of your time, but I do think that it provides a little bit of information for folks to think about, not just you all at the village, but in the trustee area, but just for folks in the audience. So, okay, so Michael Rohr, 53 Fuller Lane, Hyde Park, New York. Mayor Rogers and village trustees, please accept the following comments to be submitted to tonight's November 29th public hearing on the proposed local law regulating unreasonable or unconscionable rental increases in the village of New Paltz. And I have to say, I do agree with the prior speaker that this is very subjective language and a little bit emotional, and I think that should be looked at. So as a property owner of more than 40 years in the village of New Paltz, and I dare say that's greater than many of the speakers tonight in terms of age, I've rented to hundreds of tenants. I am proud of my ability to have provided good, solid housing at rents that tenants could afford, thus allowing me to bring several of these properties into their third century of existence, which is actually mind-blowing if you think. Many of these properties were built in the 1890s, so really we are talking 3 centuries. As anyone who has ever owned rental property knows, providing decent, affordable housing is not an easy endeavor, as there are so many competing forces to balance and many landmines and difficulties one must overcome. It is important for the trustees to realize that their job as administrators of the village is to represent the entire community, which includes those who have invested their hard-earned monies and sweat equity in the rental properties, not simply to react to recent arrivals who have expressed desire for more regulation at the expense of us. One need to simply look at the failed efforts in the city of Kingston by Ulster County to convert a former rooming house into a homeless facility to see that even with millions of dollars at your hip, the challenges can be insurmountable to convert housing into something affordable. Adoption of the above referenced local law, while perhaps well-intended, will have many counterproductive consequences. It is a law that will not in any way address the housing needs of the 21st century, nor the needs of the village residents as a whole, nor the needs of property owners to manage their buildings for their highest and best use. It simply adds more regulation, more bureaucracy, and more legal costs for both the village taxpayers and for the landlords who are primarily mom and pop property owners. The law should be subject to an early SECRA review, as the economic and environmental impacts will be many and significant. So I hope you have allotted funds for that. The law creates a selective enforcement scenario where certain properties are exempt and older properties are not. I don't understand that. Honestly, that's a dichotomy that doesn't really make sense.
You're conflating 2 things. That's state law.
Well, it's public comment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So please don't debate what my public comment is right now. So I'm just saying this is a bad practice in many ways. Okay, because that is really true. Why are you creating a dichotomy? It's a false dichotomy. The consequences of this flawed and unnecessary law are many and include: the law will be a disincentive for small landlords who provide workforce housing to invest, maintain, and improve properties in the village core where the properties are located. Introducing an additional burden to these owners while exempting large property owners is both unfair and wrong, especially when you look at your new zoning for the area north on Route 32, who, I'm sorry, but they get many zoning perks, which your people in your core, the properties in the core are not getting that. So it's really, you've already created a false dichotomy. Older properties, those built before 1974, who will be subject to this law, require much greater maintenance and utility costs that significantly impact cash flow. Property owners will need to reduce costs elsewhere to continue to pay the high taxes in New Paltz and their mortgage obligations. You guys got to realize your taxes are high. Okay, they are. You've got to do a little study on that. Okay, because I mean, we just paid a $10,000 school tax bill, and these are all valid. I want to support our schools. They are real costs, though, and so why? I just don't get this dichotomy. Why pre-1974? I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense.
Well, we didn't make it up.
Well, then don't adopt it. You don't have to, do you? So again, it's public comment. So just to be clear, you know, it's a certain amount of income that's produced from these properties, right? And you got to allocate it to the bills, the taxes, the utilities, etc. So, you know, landlords aren't necessarily going to dip into their pockets and find ways to provide the maintenance and the improvements if they just can't charge for them. But it really, to me, the worst part of this law really isn't even the cap, because we generally don't raise rents above that. It's more, don't introduce additional bureaucracy, additional regulation on properties that are already regulated. There's already many laws that protect the tenants, and that's the way it should be. We respect that. It's the way it should be. But there's just a flaw in this approach. The law, as I said, is inherently unfair as it creates an arbitrary distinction between properties built before 1974 and those that are built after. It is illogical that newer properties, especially those in the newly created NBR district, will be exempt, while older properties in the village will be subject to additional regulation and unnecessary litigation, the defense of which taxpayers will have to fund. It's illogical and flawed. Instead of penalizing older properties, the village should be supporting the reuse of existing properties that provide lower cost housing than the newly constructed housing. I think if you do a survey of Zillow, you will see that the older housing, it's cheaper by the very nature of its existence. It's not as fancy, honestly, to use a very basic word, but older housing, that is what's affordable. And if you go ahead and penalize the older housing while exempting the newer housing, again, I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense. Supporting existing housing in walkable neighborhoods, that's what we all want to do, right? The village is walkable, right? That's where we want to help people live. That's the smart thing to do, is have density in your core. And I think you need to look at your B1 and your B2 zoning. When you revised your zoning to create this new neighborhood, did you really look at the parking, the setbacks, to make sure that there is enough density allowed where you want
Okay,
it?
we're gonna ask you to wrap it up, because now you're
All
not
right.
talking about this.
So providing a free pass.
Anything else? Because
Okay,
we have
wrap it
a
up
long
then,
agenda tonight. I feel like we've heard kind of your point a few times now.
Amy, I would urge you to check your email.
My name's not Amy, it's Aileen, but all right. Okay, so have I
But yeah,
exceeded the?
I responded to your
email?
email earlier to try to help make the clarity, because the comment that you provided and then reshared just now seems to comment more so on the Emergency Tenant Protection Act or rent stabilization and not unreasonable rent increase. So I included links in my response in the email to make it more clear.
Oh, I'm
about
sorry,
what
I didn't.
law is.
I didn't see.
The law we're considering does not have it has nothing to do with years, no vacancy study, nothing like that. They're two separate things. So please check your email, and hopefully that'll help clarify things.
Okay.
So you can actually offer a comment on the law that we're considering.
Okay, well, I have offered it on the law that you're considering, and again, just to reiterate,
So Mayor Toon did ask if anybody else wants to make comment on the unreasonable rent increase public hearing. Sorry, we have to keep going with the comments so we can keep going with our agenda. Any other comments tonight on URI?
Well, excuse me though, but I do want to finish, because your law is making that very strong distinction. Your law.
No, it's not. No, it's
not.
The law has nothing to do with years of buildings. It does not.
We've tried to explain this
but
to
wait,
you
doesn't it? But
That's
am I wrong though? It does not make a distinction with the 1974?
Yeah, this law has nothing to do with 1974, 1874, 2074, not at all.
Really?
So
Okay.
check
All
it
right.
out.
Well,
Raw.
Once you've read the email,
well, no, I
you can
didn't
make
receive
another
it.
comment next time we meet. Please,
Okay.
let us move on.
Like, we would love to know your thoughts on the actual things, you know, that we're addressing. So what you're talking about is not the law. Any comments on the unreasonable rent increase law? We'll keep it open so we can keep this awesome conversation going.
But I just do want to just as
You
a
have 5
matter of
seconds.
fact.
Go. What's
No,
your
no,
final
no,
comment?
wait. My final comment is though in paragraph number 3, because of the limited number of 6 or more rental complexes in the village.
Okay, you're talking about the wrong law. We've gone over this like 11 times now. You're talking about something that is not, we're not having a public hearing about.
We can follow up. I'm happy to chat with you and walk you through which law you're, you know, talking about. Definitely, please check your email. I tried to make it
Oh,
really clear.
definitely, because I'm totally confused because that was the law that,
Yeah.
We need to
that
talk
was
about
the
this.
law that was on your website.
No,
Okay.
it's not.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay. Have a good night.
Wow.
All right, so let's go on to our agenda.
Okay, is Ryan Allen?
You know what? That is really rude, actually. I just gotta tell you, it's rude.
Thank you. Sorry, millennials are the worst.
Is Ryan Allen here? Oh, hey,
I
Ryan.
am.
Sorry, Ryan.
Thanks
I
for
am,
sticking
no,
around.
it's fine. I just want to say thank you for inviting me to this meeting. It's important for us to have an open communication. So I know we have a few things to discuss. It's good to put
Let me
a
just explain who you are. So you are the manager for County Waste in Montgomery. You are our point person for the franchise agreement that the town of New Paltz and the village of New Paltz has with County Waste, right? And you're
Correct.
relatively new in the position of being our point person.
Yes, I'm new down. I've been down there about a month and a half, 6 years in the business. So I have come from Clifton Park, moved down to Caro, which was a different district. Now I've moved down there, but yes, sir.
Right.
But I am very,
So we recently entered into a second 5-year term with County Waste. You're the exclusive hauler in the town and the village. You know, the initiative was pursued several years ago because we felt it made more sense in a community like ours not to have numerous residential haulers serving our community. We wanted to identify a single hauler that would then serve our town and village wide. It makes more sense in terms of wear and tear on the road. It makes more sense from an environmental perspective, a traffic and congestion perspective, and additionally, the price. Like you bid on this opportunity to provide the opportunity to haul away trash and recycling at a particular rate, and other trash haulers also bid against you. You were the low bid plus 5 years ago, and you were the low bid more recent. So that's kind of like our 20,000 foot background. One of the reasons that I was really glad that you accepted our invitation to chat with us, because I think what we need to do is we need much better communication with you. We've heard from various people in our community that they have felt frustrated that, and you and I were talking about this on the phone, that sometimes it seems like the trucks, the dual body trucks that take away trash as well as recycling, they have a flap that flips over. Windier time of year, it seems like there may be instances where that truck ends up actually collecting debris and then it gets blown out of the top of the truck. And it's very frustrating. We've heard this complaint before. We'd love to know, is there a way that you could make sure your drivers are being more careful?
well, with the increase in recycling now that, with Amazon and what have you, most people are now ordering online. the issue that we're having not necessarily is A, the cardboard, and B, and also the plastic that they put within, for the packing tends to be the issue that's blowing out of the truck. So what we have been doing is having the drivers try to dump the recycling first, and as the flipper panel goes over, it closes that door and it gives them that second or two to dump the trash, where it doesn't allow the air to get underneath it to make it go up into the air. Generally in the past, most drivers, just out of the way the cans were set up or what have you on either side, they would dump the trash first and then recycling. So we have made that change, especially going into the holiday season. And especially this time of the year, we always ask everybody, make sure you knock down a cardboard, make sure it can fit within the can. But there is an excessive amount compared to years in the past, but it's what we need to mitigate. And we definitely don't want your residents complaining that a service that we're providing is not sufficient.
Right. Any questions or feedback from my board colleagues for you? Bill, you had mentioned.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Excuse me. My ADHD does not allow me to hear him when you're still talking, so I need you guys to shush. Thank you. Everybody. That goes for everybody, Maggie. Everybody.
Bill had a question or an observation.
An observation, Ryan, thank you for getting back to me and the residents at Millbrook about 2 weeks ago. I guess you had an issue with 3 customers on the street and the truck not being able to back up. But you resolved the issue, I felt, in a timely manner, and we hope that practice continues throughout the country.
No, I completely agree. I don't know under prior management, but it's important for the response. Part of what our contract is, within 72 hours, we're supposed to respond to issues, but it's a small village. It's busy. There's a lot of trash to pick up. We work very hard. We're under a time restraint with the 7 o'clock. So we want to make sure we pick it up in a timely manner and the correct manner and not make a mess. Be quite frankly.
I also want to just
Go ahead, Sana.
point out one thing. My neighbors have seen it, and I've seen it where both of my cans were picked up at the same time. Literally just grabbed both. And I'm not sure if it's possible when that happens for them to go into separate bins. So I've purposely been trying to move my cans further away from each other.
Yep.
I thought perhaps it was because they were too close together, but like that shouldn't happen because I work really hard at separating my garbage, and I clean it out like I clean my dishes. So
So the cans are supposed to be at least 5 feet away from each other, and I think that's probably what happens is when people put them too close, that can happen. But what can your drivers do in that situation instead of picking both up simultaneously? What can be done?
What I will ask is for your residents, what you have a phone number to call, is let us know, because the pneumatic claw is basically ran off of a button. It's a joystick that's in the truck. So it will grab them, but it locks onto it. So he's kind of stuck with what he has in order to dump it. So as long as they call in and the communication is there, generally if they're separated by 2 foot, we ask to put them on each side of the driveway. You won't have that issue. But once it locks on it and the arm starts going to dump it, the cans just need to be separated enough. That's all.
I just want to say that's news to me of this 5-foot rule. So thank you. And I promise I will do that with my cans from now on. It just makes me think,
you need to publicize that.
It's in our materials.
I'm sure I didn't realize I needed. It was
Yeah, the arm is basically like a big basket. So if you look at it kind of like a claw on a crab, when it closes, it grabs on. So you need to have the separation of the cans because it doesn't know the difference, and that's probably what had happened is they're too close together. So it kind of bundles them both and then dumps it.
Well, my point was that communication like this is so good because here I learned something and perhaps other community members didn't know either. And not your fault, no one's fault except for me just not reading the directions on how to properly place my garbage cans out. And yeah, this is my first time owning a home the last 3 years, so it's news to me. But yeah, I think, thank you for being here and for addressing these comments. I know sometimes online, a lot of people say a lot of negative things, and then when you put a face to someone who works there and it's clear that you're all being mindful of how to best serve the community, I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and like I said, anyone, or if they want to call or any questions you want to forward to me, I'm always open. Call, Tim, you have my cell. It's always on. I really don't mind the phone calls. Last thing I need to do is have issues with your residents, and also, you guys have a lot on your plate, and we're worried about a service that should be pretty simple and should flow pretty easy.
Right. So what do you suggest residents do if they're on a street in the village that's well used by people looking for parking spaces, and they're trying to squeeze their garbage cans, and to Michelle's point, like, you might not realize that you need a full 5 feet, or even if you do move it 5 feet, what if they get moved closer together, and you end up in a situation where the two cans are being grabbed simultaneously? Like, is there a best practice for how the cans should be left out on a crowded street?
It gets difficult at that point because you don't know where the car is going to park. That's a communication that you should have with me, that I will have with the driver, which you have a normal route driver that runs your route. He should actually physically get out, move the can in order for him to dump them. Sometimes it's not safe for him to do it. If it's a busy street, I mean, our core value number one is safety. I really don't want him getting out in traffic. Which is why we have tablets. We run tablets that we can mark the stop as blocked. But if you receive a call, please call us. With us running the tablet, he has the availability to take a picture to prove why it's blocked. And B, it's just a normal conversation to say, why exactly on this certain stop, or maybe it could be a couple stops in a row you didn't get out, and it's car after car after car, and there's no way for me to grab them without either doing damage to property or safety on my end.
For the record, my block is not a through street and it's super quiet. Putting that out there.
So what happens if a stop is missed? Maybe the driver wasn't able to access the cans, and then what should a resident do?
I would have them call your phone number, and then either you can call us, send an email to me. We do have a mist truck that runs a couple days a week. It's a mist/bulk truck. So also, if you have residents that have bulk that needs to be picked up, just a simple email, and we'll send it's a small, like a rear load. It doesn't have the pneumatic arm, hydraulic arm that grabs it, and he will go out and get that mist.
Are there ever situations where a spot or a stop is missed, and then the resident calls, and then they're told that there's an additional fee to come back?
Not under the contract that we have. I don't believe that we have anything in there, or there's no verbiage in that says that you pay an extra for a go back.
Well, go ahead, Bill.
Ryan, just one thing, your robocalls alerting residents about no pickup on Thanksgiving Day, we did not receive one. So, and most of my neighbors did not as well. So just an FYI on that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is we're supposed to be getting reports from you. Are you getting them? Okay, never mind.
Yeah, once a month I send them out. Should be getting one here in a few days.
So what about text alerts? Because like Bill just mentioned, a robocall. I don't think I got a robocall, but I definitely got a robo text. about Thanksgiving and
Yes.
the delay of,
I didn't get anything.
so I wonder, I mean, maybe it's just not set up in Bill's profile to get a text. Like, is that something that we should be encouraging people to set up?
The only thing they can do, they have to call and ensure that either A, they have the correct phone number, or B, they have the correct email address. Because I know they send them both when either weather-related issues, or if we're on a delay, or say a truck goes down, what have you, we can't run the route for that day. But yes, that otherwise it's just a robocall. It's the computer that sends it out, so they might not have the correct information.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you, attending this evening, and it seems like you have a comfortableness with customer service and willing to answer our questions. Your predecessor, Chris, I had a good rapport with him as well. He was very responsive when we needed to, sort out problems, because problems will arise. And, what we try to do is encourage people to give us a heads up. It's probably more impactful to do that than venting on social media, but I understand that, that's an important process as well. But we have historically solved many issues, and to Michelle's point too, like putting a name and a face together, and one of the reasons that we wanted to do this in a public setting is just to reinforce with our public that we absolutely want to make sure that services of a certain standard that makes people happy, as opposed to making them frustrated. Because I know not everyone loves the idea of not being allowed to choose who their hauler is, but I think the macro benefits are really valuable. And I continue to think that this is an important initiative to make sure that we have one truck going down a street per week, as opposed to multiple, for a variety of reasons.
No, I agree. The amount of hydraulics that run these trucks, when you're running multiple trucks, multiple, companies down there, I mean, the environmental impact is a huge deal to consider.
Right. Any other questions, observations from our board? But I'll make sure that we all have your number. Our staff will have your number. And there will be hiccups along the way. I think it's unreasonable to assume that you're going to wave a magic wand and fix everything. But I think what's important is that we have this open line of communication, so we can address issues as they arise.
No, I agree. And any or all, please feel free to send it to me, whether it's a phone, text, email. We'll definitely keep in touch and definitely mitigate whatever issues we have.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
So much.
Have a good night.
So next on our agenda, we have Neil Weissman. Is Neil online? I spoke with Neil on the phone today. He told me he was going to Zoom in.
Hi, I'm here. Mayor, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right,
Do
fine.
you have a camera? Do you want to?
I do. Hold on.
Face with a name.
I'm getting a message that I can't start video. Oh, there we go. Okay, so thank you. I just want to say, yes, we did speak. I want to thank you all for reaching out to SUNY. I mean, the weekend in New Paltz is a high point of our year down at the Cycle Club.
Hold on, Neil, just tell us who you are, who you represent.
Sure. My name is Neil Weissman. I'm Public Relations Director for the New York Cycle Club. We've been in existence since 1936. We have 3,500 members. And every year since 2015, we have been organizing a weekend at SUNY New Paltz. So on Monday, I had emailed the school to let them know to pencil in some dates for 2024, and they simply emailed back saying, we can't accommodate you this year. And I tried to get some clarity, saying, well, what's the rationale? What's going on? And they just simply said, we're not supporting groups that don't align with our mission. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. But then they said, look, we're doing construction, and we don't know that we can accommodate you. So I reached out to Mac Doris, who runs the Ride for Mental Health, and together we reached out to you, and to say, is there any negotiation here? And you did reach back to us and said that they will work with us and will work with their schedule, and we promise to be flexible. But I'm just saying is that in addition to our organizing this weekend, we are promoting cycling in New Paltz to about 3,500 members and over 10,000 members who may not make the weekend, but they come up here because we have created the relationship with Metro North and New Jersey Transit. We've mapped out the routes. So we've basically got the formula for our members to come out to you guys all year round. So I just want to say thank you again, and let me leave it at that.
Good stuff. Yeah. And, from what I understand, SUNY is facing a fairly daunting construction schedule. They have a lot of ambitious projects staring them in the face. They're going to have, different buildings shut down over the next couple of years, and lots of work is going on. I feel, because the senior administration who I spoke with about your inquiry, they said that the response generally is that they will expect to have a hard time accommodating larger groups, but they are going to take a close look at what you're trying to accomplish and to see what can be fit in when. And it might not be as seamless as it has been in the past, but definitely continue to talk with them. And I have full faith that they're going to do the absolute best that they can. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. So the next item, so we have the results of the vacancy rates for Neil. No, we don't have to take any action. Hey, what's up, Mac? You want to come say hi?
Come say hi.
Yeah.
Founder of the Ride for Mental Health. We
I
started.
didn't know you were here. Sorry.
Started the ride. That's why I always wear my hat. Started the ride. Everybody loves these hats. We started the ride in 2017, just to give everybody the background. About a year after we lost our middle son, Eric, to his battle with mental illness. He was an outpatient at McLean Hospital when he died in 2016 of opioid overdose. I looked around on the internet for charity bike rides for mental health, and there were almost none in the United States. So we decided to start one. We had about 100 riders in 2017. This past summer, we had 400 plus registered riders for the in-person ride. We now have start finish at the Ulster County Fairgrounds. We have dinner for everybody on Saturday night. We have about 150 volunteers. We've now raised a little over $1.2 million since inception. I think we're just sort of the tip of the iceberg. I really think over time, we should be at least 1,000 in-person riders. We should be raising $1 million every year. So we just, we're continuing to grow. And one of the key elements to all of this is having access to rooms at SUNY. And that's partly why our dates are in June. It's the weekend after Father's Day. We, signed a catering contract probably a month after this summer's ride, because it's so hard to get caterers and so on and so forth. So all that stuff gets put into place early on. And so I had just learned from Neil actually that SUNY was going to have a problem. And so thanks to you, we will, work with them and make sure we'll find a way. But
my fingers are crossed. I think it's going to be challenging. I mean, Shelley Hallstad and Shelley Wright, they're very solution oriented. So I think you're in good hands, but my fingers are crossed.
Yeah, we'll find a way.
Good.
But thank you very much. And I hope you all come and ride next summer, June 22, 23, or volunteer or both. And thanks. And we'll make the connection with those people.
Sounds good. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for all you do.
Vacancy rate study. So we have results. You want to go over the details that we've received and potential next steps?
Yeah, so, the draft study, it's based on, basically the process is like laid out, methodology and whatnot, intended to help, our village determine whether or not we may declare a housing emergency as defined by the state in the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974, which was then updated in 2019, which makes it so that communities outside of New York City and Westchester could do it. So I don't have to read the whole study because it's linked in the agenda and will be in the minutes too for everyone to check out and stuff. But basically, there were 15 properties identified that would be covered under ETPA requirements. And so it considered housing combinations that could be subject to those regulations of ETPA. So it only considered housing accommodations with 6 or more units, legally established residential units built prior to January 1st, 1974. And so there were some exempted from the study, like if they just didn't fit into those, So then to determine the vacancy rate, we did the same process that other municipalities have done and that have withstood the test of lawsuits, basically copied it and surveyed property owners for the identified properties during a snapshot. So it's a lot like how the US Census is run. Even though the census takes a longer time to gather that data, it only gathers data for a snapshot of one day. This study, much smaller scale because we're just a village and not a whole country, it was designed to be a snapshot of 1 month. We figured that would be a good window. So that month was so September 22nd with a deadline of October 18th. And there was a cover letter and a brief survey, and those are available, to everybody to check out in the study that again is now linked everywhere. Asking each property owner to confirm the total number of units and the number that were occupied at the time of the survey, how many were unoccupied, which means available to rent, and the number that were unoccupied and off market due to stuff like renovation, uninhabitable conditions, or any other reasons. And ask for a signature and a date to attest the information was true and accurate. And so, yeah, again, you can see copies of all of that in the study itself. So it did state that if no response was submitted by October 18th, that it would be assumed the property had no vacancies. But we like to do things a little bit more, hands-on and transparently in the village than ever. So when there weren't responses, we did a little bit extra follow-up. A couple of volunteers did some phone calls, and we did another round of official letters sent from the village by certified mail. And the first, it was, by the way, sent by mail and by email. So then the ones that did not respond then got a certified mail version as well, as an additional email and some nudges or calls from volunteers who were helping out. So we did that certified mail one, basically saying we want to extend that snapshot just to get any more responses we could. We sent that out on October 26th, asking for responses by November 1st. Just want to make sure that people got it if they didn't respond. And got no additional responses. The village did not receive any additional responses within the survey window. The village did receive a late response on November 14th. So we wanted to basically get that all documented in our study so everyone can see the methodology and every little step of the way, because it's pretty cool, actually. Let's see. So then formal survey findings. So the final 11 properties that were included in the study represent 528 rental units in the village. 9 out of 11, or 81% of property owners responded to the survey within the window. Based on the estimated rental vacancies within the survey window, and that's including the extension that we granted until November 1st. The survey found that 510 were occupied, 14 were vacant, and 4 were not occupied, but off market for renovation or other reasons. So based on the methodology established in the study for property owners that did not respond to the survey within the survey window, no vacancies were assumed for those properties. So there were 3 properties with a total of 272 units that were surveyed, but did not respond to the survey within the survey window after multiple attempts to contact. And so we have appendixes, basically for all the final calculations, using the methodology that I kind of outlined, and that's outlined in the study. And based on the Census Bureau methodology and using previous vacancy rate surveys, the result is a net vacancy rate of 2.7% for this class of rental properties in the village of New Paltz. And so I urge the public, to take some time and look at this, because I don't know, it's an interesting snapshot, basically, of what the ETPA properties look like, during a specific point of time in our community. So what next steps would be is, at maybe the next meeting, I would ask my colleagues to have us put on the agenda a resolution saying that based on this, we can declare an emergency, a housing emergency here in the village. And that we would want to move the question of whether or not to adopt the Emergency Tenant Protection Act or rent stabilization to public hearing. And so we can't do that yet because we need to have our resolution and stuff. But yeah, colleagues at the board, do you have anything you want to talk about? I know Bill had a good little edit. Did you to the study?
How good it was. I was just suggesting that your summary at the very end, your conclusion should come at the top rather than having to wade through that, so that engage the viewer, the reader, to go further into the data.
Yeah, and I think that's I like that suggestion, and I would like for us to figure out how to include that edit for next time, because you're right, the lead is buried. It's like a paper that I was working with Kai on, and at weird hours at night. Yeah.
just everything's great. Everything just that suggestion.
Cool.
Do we have updated numbers in terms of the total number of rental units, regardless of whether they are pre or post 74, and regardless of whether they're 6 or,
Oh, just our whole rental
total,
stock?
yeah.
I don't have that on me, but we have a rental registry, so let's ask the building
Because I
department.
think we should have that number while we're digesting this, because I think what's particularly curious about pursuing a vacancy study in the village of New Paltz is that so much of our housing stock is smaller than 6 units. So this is a unique snapshot of our rental market. I'm not exactly sure what this is representative of. Yeah, this is 11 properties.
Yeah. So let's make sure to, ask our building department for updated stuff on, for our rental registry law, to have, as part of our discussion, for next meeting, when we have that resolution and stuff, in addition to figuring out how to just also include not bearing the lead, in the actual study itself. Yeah.
So the points that were brought up by one of our commenters that in this sheet that was given to us, can we look into those properties?
Those are not, please
Those
look
are
at the
not in
actual
this.
study. So that comment is based on not the actual study. That was what I was trying to say. So what we have before us that is marked as, what are marked as draft, and it's that's the study. That is
Got it.
the vacancy rate study. And it does note that, we like going off the parcel viewer, had an original list that was a little bit longer, but then based on a lot of work that, Mayor Tim and I did with our county planning department, shout out to Kai for being an absolute rock star and partner in this. Like we're like, oh, well, those don't make sense because we know like that wasn't an apartment in the 70s and stuff. So we went through and
I just
definitely
wanted
addressed it.
clarity, 'cause I
Yeah.
had read that before I saw this and I didn't have time to look at it.
I think what's also, I mean, I can share, we were handed this sheet tonight. The number of units on this sheet are also not the number of units that are on our study. Like for instance, this particular property, 26 South Oakwood, it's listed on this sheet as having 7 units, but it's listed in our study as having 8. There's like three other inconsistencies in terms of the number of units on this sheet with the number of units in the study.
That was to me very striking from many years ago, project I had helped the village with long before I ever thought I'd ever run for anything. Going through the rental registry and comparing it to the actual parcels and tax parcels and stuff. And that was something I worked with our building department on, and some amazing volunteers like Maeve. And it's just wild how, we still are having those discrepancies and stuff.
So you
But we
think
have
this
to
data
go-
was pulled from county GIS where?
That's what I like. I'm dying to go home and try to see where that was pulled from, because we have a rental registry, which is
Where we
supposed
have
to.
people who actually go in and count the number of units.
Exactly. It tends, and that's why there's sometimes our discrepancies, and it should be that way. Because everything is impacted by all of that. So I think our numbers should be more accurate, but that does bring up other cans of worms that will be addressed.
I just want to thank everybody who worked on this for all their hard work. And I know, Alex, like the number of hours you put into this, and I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think this is really cool because I 2 years ago was like, there's no point in even trying to do this because it, it won't help everybody, blah, 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 blah. But we're at this point where we need to try every tool in every toolbox in every way that tool can possibly function, even if it's not the prescribed way that tool could work. And that's not what I'm talking about here, but we need to throw every piece of spaghetti at the wall because we've been hearing the stories, we've been living them, right? I don't really know anyone that's thriving right now in our community, to be quite honest, at least in the housing realm. And if you are, then I'm happy for you, but I don't know anybody, and we got to try it all. And I'm really grateful that we were the first municipality to opt into Ulster County's Housing Smart Communities program, which is, for those who don't know, it's kind of based on how the state's Climate Smart Communities program works, where there's benchmarking that you, as a community, as a municipality, you go through those benchmarks as a process, and that earns you points in this whole system. So we get access to more resources from the county to actually address these issues. And what those resources are going to continue to look like, we don't even know, but there's funding that the county is earmarking for specifically addressing this issue. And we need to have these conversations. And, I understand let's support it, let's oppose it, but we really need to hear more specific stories about these things so that we can kind of use these conversations to help navigate that overall conversation for our whole county and our local community, with how they're going to support us, right? What can that funding do? I'm hearing landlords say, and I know it, I see it too, like the cost of maintenance, like the cost of life is a lot right now. So maybe there's ways that like this program, the Housing Smart Communities program, can better address those issues for our local landlords. And at the same time, wouldn't that address our local tenants like issues with, you know, like subpar living conditions? And maybe it could all be done without raising rent at all. So doing this process and going through the whole part of it is really vital to our participation in the Housing Smart Communities program and like engaging in that conversation. So like this is just the beginning.
Michelle?
This isn't comprehensive, correct? This isn't all the rent.
It only covers ETPA eligible units.
So this is all they all responded.
That's not that. That's not the vacancy rate study.
Sorry,
That
not
was
this. I apologize.
a lobbyist
I apologize.
printout. Yeah.
Did everyone respond? No.
No.
So that's
included in the study, like
Right.
who responded and the methodology, you know, of what.
So I just want to say thanks to those folks who did respond.
Yeah.
And encourage, I mean, I know our deadline passed, but it would be so helpful if we, as a community, worked together and everyone responded. So we've had comprehensive information to really make some progress and help folks, like you said, help everyone come together to figure out the best solution to move forward.
So the ones that did not formally respond, I will say that our super volunteer, Brittany, who I was like, can you call them again? Can you text them? You know, try one more time, like just keep at it on her days off. Like she, you know, like amazing. She's like, okay, I'll keep trying. She got responses saying, well, we didn't respond because we were at a 0 and the study said, if we don't respond, it'll be a 0. So that's not an official response, but
So how many of
just to defend
those,
folks.
how many of those are of this 11?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, well, let's find that
I think
out
the answers
soon.
are in here, you know,
They're
in the study.
text?
Yeah.
All right, should we move on to the next topic, or do we need to take an action tonight?
We need to have a resolution that declares, you know, like next steps, like, so that resolution I think should be next meeting.
Okay,
Because I like, we can't have a public hearing without having the edits that we want to make in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want the final one. If that's okay. So this will be on the next agenda, and at that meeting, we will then set the public hearing. Cool. Okay.
okay, so the next item is we have a draft local law related to chapter 132. This is the village's affordable housing law. So as Terry Dolan, chair of our affordable housing committee, pointed out, this law has existed since 2015. So this is an edit that was suggested by the committee members. And currently the way the law works is if you build an apartment complex with 10 or more units, 10% has to be affordable. We define affordable as the law is currently written at or below 60% of Ulster County's median household income adjusted for family size. And this law would require complexes with 21 or more units to offer 15% of all of the units affordable. And then the other tweak would be we would define and we would attempt to have a tiered system where half of those units would be at 40% or below of Ulster County's MHI adjusted for family, and then the other half would be 80% at or below Ulster County's MHI adjusted for family size. So any comments, thoughts about this proposed change to the village's affordable housing law? No.
I am excited. I'm so grateful to our Affordable Housing Board for working on this, and for, you know, your quick work on it, Tim. And I'm excited to move to a
Rich, when we
public
schedule a
hearing.
public hearing, you can make a comment, but this is just a conversation about it. Any other comments from trustees? What were you gonna ask?
Oh, no, I was just saying, you know, I'm so grateful for the Affordable Housing Board volunteers for working so hard on this, and for you also, you know, really spearheading, you know, getting what I think it looks really right and ready. And I'm excited to move this to a public hearing.
Okay, I'm gonna move that we declare this a type 1 action per seeker, and that our village board's intent would be to declare ourselves as lead agency. And I'm also going to suggest that we hold a public hearing at our open a public hearing in our next December 20th, based on the calendar. Too soon.
Second.
Clearly. Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, New York Public Access presentation by Anton Stewart.
Good evening. Thank you. A lot you've had to go through tonight. Appreciate very much supporting it.
Yes.
So we've got a small slideshow presentation, which my colleague Joe is going to go through first, if that's okay by you. And then there's a couple of things I think we'd like to speak to, and give you the opportunity to ask any questions or bombard us any way you so desire, if that works for you. Can you bring Joe up sort of on?
Hello, can you folks hear me and see the screen?
We need you to put up what you want to share with us.
You
We
need
can't
to
see it. We can see your face.
share your screen.
Okay, let me work on this. Share entire screen. All right, thank you so much, folks. My name is Joseph Davis. I first moved to the area here in 2018. And can you see the screen now?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, thanks, folks. I'll keep this brief. I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Board of Trustees, for your patience and service to the community. We appreciate you, and having us here today is we're very thankful for this. We're proposing that the New Paltz Public Access Television Station can move forward with the proposal for a franchise agreement. And I'm going to talk about the purpose, vision, and the request that we have for all of you here today. So the purposes of public access mainly is to preserve the First Amendment freedoms, freedom of speech, but also free from corporate algorithms and commercials, which most of our media is soaked with these days. So we are talking really about collaborative, collective creativity here in the community. So locally produced information and entertainment for and by the community. And that's both entertainment and informative stuff like, hey, you should put your trash cans 5 feet apart or something like that for the future. Certain information, we want to be a community information resource for the community. And that means government transparency, where meetings just like this one that we're experiencing now can be broadcast and repeated on Channel 23 for all to receive. And then with that goes the obvious emergency news and information that can be accessible by all community members, similar to what we did during COVID, you know, having Pat Ryan's broadcasts with information about COVID being available for folks on NPZ TV, Channel 23. So that's the basics of what we are for purpose, but we want to take it to the next step. And our vision is to be able to have a fully equipped studio space that can be accessible by the community. We want to give public access to public access, which would increase public engagement. We want to have interns and open door training sessions to actually give the community members the chance to foster their creativity and create shows, create programs, and endorse and cover local events and non-for-profit organizations. This is a big passion of mine, being a student of SUNY New Paltz with digital media arts. I really love this community and love telling stories about the history and the future. So to be able to give that tool to this community would be amazing. We would love to have a set where you could come in and stand behind a green screen or a virtual set, have streaming equipment where you can broadcast right to Channel 23, NPZ TV. We want to have editing and live broadcast suites so folks can actually come to us and, with the assistance of me and other trained, knowledgeable assistants on hand, can be walked through the process of creating their own TV show with high quality audio production and user-friendly lighting. We also dream of having local weather and traffic cameras for New Paltz and the village and the town to be viewed right on Channel 23. But that would turn the community center into a user-friendly studio with professional equipment, open, inclusive, accessible to all. This is one of the examples of something at the community center is the improv troupe I started 2020. And this is just one of the many programs that happen at the community center. And we would love to be able to plug in and stream right on Channel 23. We're so close to being able to do it, but we need to further our connections in this community and take this to the next step. We have all of these collaboration opportunities in mind. We've spoken with the Elting Memorial Library about collaborating with them, the Huguenot Historical Society, to help capture and really cement our history of the village and the oldest street in America. The SUNY New Paltz School District, the local school district and SUNY New Paltz both have made television shows in the past and different media. We want to involve those programs so that they can actually have a platform for their finished work that is put into it. And I know from experience, when I was in community college and the board created something similar, when you see your hard work on public access TV, you just feel like you've made it. It's something really exciting. And also that is going to go for the Hawk Studios Club on campus, which I've been in talks with. So the Millbrook Preserve is another one we want to showcase our area's beauty, and the Hudson Valley Crusaders, an example of a local sports group, the United Women's Soccer League, that wants to have their games broadcast on public access in the future. So all amazing collaborations that we want to have. But what's another one is the Rosendale Theater, where I am a social media and community outreach manager. And I also have started a short film series that we're working out in the future, where we have short films from the local area screened in front of a live audience. And then we film the process of the audience asking questions. So creating a live dialogue about films and documentaries that therefore go straight from the Rosendale Theater in person to New Paltz public access television in 2023. So we really want to come together and bring the community together. And now is the time, because we finally have an agreement with Spectrum to provide HD as a part of the new franchise renewal at zero cost to us. So this is something that we've been working on for 10 years. You know, I'm a new member to the board of New Paltz Public Access this year, but I'm very excited to announce that that is something that is finally going to be capable once we get the pieces moving. We've always been able to send out HD, but now Spectrum will be able to receive and broadcast an HD signal once we get the franchise renewal passed. So not only high quality video, but audio as well, of meetings, of everything, and all of our original content will be in HD, both on TV and online. One other part is the Spectrum used to have a plan where any seniors who wanted to, pay 12 months good standing as Spectrum members would get the 13th month free. So unfortunately, that program is with Spectrum, and our communication with them cannot continue in the future. However, they will agree to grandfather in any existing seniors who are currently enrolled in the program. So this is something that's great for seniors in the area, and it's something that we've helped negotiate with Spectrum. And we just need your help to take flight. We need to all come together like the blue heron here to bring Channel 23 back to life. And I think there's a really reasonable way to do this, which is detailed in our franchise agreement, which would do a slight increase in costs on the Spectrum franchise fee, which would approximately cost 38 cents a month per household. So that's per cable household every month, 38 cents. And the estimated revenue generated for the current members that they have would equivalent, if that was given to public access, about $16,714. That is plenty of, what we would need to get all of those streams that we've gone over in the vision. And that's just 38 cents. We're talking about a quarter, a dime, and 3 pennies. Folks, the average cup of coffee is $5.90. We're talking 1/15 a cup of coffee to have access to live entertainment and information right on Channel 23 in HD. I think it's a small sacrifice for pocket change per month to be added to give us a life, a heartbeat, so we can really come together and get this collective creative community up and running again. So 1/15 of a latte, we can do it. The next steps, we need the town and village to help us get our voice back. We need the town and village to approve the franchise proposal, which Anton and Bob there in person can go over more in detail. The public hearings will be held. And then the updated franchise agreement would be renewed. And then the town and village, we would ask to create the intermunicipal agreement to just guarantee funding and space for public access TV. I think this is something that we can definitely do. And, I think that with the public's help, we can create something extremely unique, just like I think our community is, where not only are we giving you the tools to create, but we're having an amazing platform. So you don't have to go to New Paltz Community Facebook page to hear about your fellow opinions or communicate ideas. You can actually go on TV and have it captured in high quality. So for filmmakers like myself, this is a very exciting opportunity, which is why I've been a member of the board for so long. But now we need your help to bring it back, because I know there is great things that can happen with your help if we're able to move this forward. We must have a voice and a presence in this community. And when I say this community, I'm talking about you, because public access includes everyone. You, meaning the royal we. We must come together and have a platform, have a voice, and have a connected community who can experience this. So I thank you all for listening. And just in closing, the major ask that we're asking for: a place to call home, guaranteed funding of public access, that's that 38 cents we were talking about a month, agreement to the franchise renewal so we can move forward and get this in motion. And then that will automatically give us the next 2 items: HD capability for 23, the grandfathering in of the senior discount. And we are even looking to have Spectrum include in that free internet for the community center, so that we can have different events there with Spectrum assisting us, and as well as the NPZ TV servers. Since we already have our own email servers and phones and website, have our servers housed on free internet from Spectrum. And we even want to have the Elting Library included on that list. But ultimately, it's about moving forward. And I just thank you all for listening. I'm here to answer any questions, but I'm very glad to be a member of this community. And I hope we can create some of the most unique and original content that really ultimately will draw more people to Spectrum, where they might have it be a necessity in every dorm room, because you have to see what all the amazing students, community members are making and producing for public access television. So thank you so much. Bring back NPZ TV, Channel 23. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Very, very impassioned. Love it. Just to speak to a couple of the things there where we're at, which is where I want to bring you good folks up to speed. We're at a little bit of an impasse right now. We've got the new guy, the director of Executive Government Relations, as Executive Director of Government Relations. Alex Carmada, if I can, I probably murdered his title and I apologize for that. It's chalk and cheese from dealing with him than his predecessor. As you may recall, it's been a bit of a crapshoot dealing with Spectrum. They've always liked to say no from the get-go. This guy seems like he's reasonable and quite willing to accommodate quite a lot of things for us. The one thing that we really hoped to bring about was revenue from internet services, cable and internet services. Unfortunately, we don't have the legal standing to do that. It's way outside of us. It would require an act of Congress to actually make that doable. So there's nothing that we're going to do with that in the immediate future. Happy to go and talk to Pat Ryan, but there's not much else we can do there. So the big sticking issues that we hit on was the senior discount. Alex has been upfront and said it's not a cost issue. It's a practicality issue. They don't have the resource to be able to effectively bill that because it's such an ad hoc thing, because it runs for whenever somebody starts their account. It's not like on the calendar year or a fiscal year. It's unique to each subscriber. So they have to have been, claiming this discount. The idea is that if they've maintained their account for 12 months straight and not been delinquent, or what I'm sure what they mean by delinquent payments, but kept it in good standing, they would receive the cost of basic cable alone as the 13th month free. So that wouldn't cover their entire bill. So if they've bundled, they've got internet and DVR services and all that sort of stuff, it will only cover the basic cable part of the bill. And from what I'm given to understand, although obviously I don't have complete access to subscriber numbers, is that we're talking very few people actually claim it. And according to Alex, he thinks the number is what, Bob, less than 15 total in the town, something like 11 people. And we just put in a request to somebody to see if he could get that sorted, and we found out there's a slight issue with the billing, so we're going to chase that one down. That would make it then 12 perhaps. so I don't know. But what he's offering to do instead of the senior discount, he will grandfather in everybody who's in right now. Who gets it, they're not going to lose it. But what they want to do is maybe partner with a non-profit. And what we suggested, or what we'd like to suggest, which is, I've written to you, but I didn't really get a response. What we'd like to do is ask for free internet at the community centre, Eltingham Memorial Library, and for the NPZ TV Broadcast Centre at the community centre. The reason we need 2 internet connections at the community centre is inherently it has to be separate for the and we would need a static IP address block anyway. So there's those 3 things. I don't think that's an awful lot of money for them. I don't think that's a ridiculous ask. But in return for that, what we'd like to do is offer, in partnership with Eltingham Memorial Library, little pop-up workshops which assist our seniors, like how to use a mobile phone, how to post on Facebook, etc., how to keep yourself safe online, that kind of thing. Basic video editing or photo editing workshops, because we obviously plan on training our own interns. So this is something we'd set up a pop-up training center at the community center as well. But what we need to make this happen for us, obviously we need HD. It's, all of you know, currently channel 23 is barely watchable on Spectrum. The quality is awful due to unnecessary standards conversion. They're prepared to give us the equipment and provide the facility for us to broadcast in HD at no cost to us. He said that's part of the franchise renewal. What we're asking to guarantee that public access continues is that there is an intermunicipal agreement to fund public access. And we propose to do that by increasing the franchise fee from 3.5% to 4%. And I actually sent you an email with the numbers on this, but that would increase the franchise paid from what have we got? The total estimate is 117,000 at the moment for this year, both town and village. And that would increase it to 133,714, net gain of $16,714, which we would like not to go into the general fund, but to go to fund public access. We propose that would be split in exactly the same way as the subscriber split is between town and village. At the moment, 68% of the subscribers to Spectrum are in the town and 32% in the village. I've detailed this in the email to you, but where are we at? So that would mean that the town would be paying $11,365.52, and the village would be paying $5,348.48. However, you've got a current line item at the village at the moment of $3,000 to fund public access, although there were no payments made last year and we haven't received anything this year. So although it looks like an increase, the fact
We have asked you I have emailed you. I have not got a response.
You've invoiced the village?
Not invoiced, just asked if you would start funding the coordinator position along with the town, which the town has been funding the coordinator position and whatever expenses we've had.
So anyway, we obviously this is something that needs to be firmed up and take the ambiguity out of it. Pointing fingers isn't going to fix a damn thing. We need to work to resolve, ideally. By virtue of the fact that this would actually be paid purely by the increase in franchise fee, which equates for the average subscriber to be about less than 38 cents a month. It's not a big ask, and I don't think we would hit any headwind against that, considering what we're hoping to bring about. But that's basically the long and the short of it. We were offered studio space back in August of 2020. The town of New Paltz actually approved our use of a dedicated space at the community centre to use as a broadcast studio. Of course, this was all pandemic years, which made life kind of awkward. Well, we did move our broadcast equipment into the closet from the main room into the storage room adjoining that, and we've done an awful lot of work in the interim. We've held off actually converting that space into a studio until such time as we really have the HD capability, because nobody's been desperately motivated, is the long and short of it. So our ask to you is as we detailed in writing, but just to put you where we're at right now, we're in quite a good position. We've got a fully staffed committee that are very active to get things done. They want to get things done. We've got young blood on there with an awful lot of technical experience as well. We've invested considerable amounts of time and personal funds to bring our broadcast equipment up to date. All of it is now as a minimum full 1080p HD. Some of it's 4K capable. We've established a 501c3 nonprofit, New Paltz Television Inc., to actually manage and operate Channel 23. That exists now. We've created a website for that, mpztv.org, which includes the ability to watch Channel 23 real time from anywhere. We've established the ability to remotely monitor and manage programming and our equipment remotely via a secure VPN, so we can actually deal with stuff 24/7 when there's an issue. We've established the ability to receive now multiple live streams through any suitable source and broadcast it live on Channel 23 and also part of our live stream. We've established our own mail servers, provisioned email accounts. We've established a VoIP server. We now have a contact number. So we've been working, but we need you guys to come to the party is the long and the short of it. Do you want to support public access television?
Do you know whether the town, like how much was the dollar amount that you shared that the town has contributed to the public access coordinator position?
The budget line for the town for this year is $3,456.
And what fund would that come out of?
I'd have to go into my stuff, but I can give you the line item from the budget. If do you need that now, or do you?
I'm super curious, yeah.
You actually want me to go on the budget? Just give me a second and hold on. So it's going to take me a while, but I should be able to do this.
Yeah, go ahead. What other questions say the trustees have? I mean, we had a public conversation about this. We were very hesitant and not in support of the idea of forfeiting the senior discount. Like, we have seniors who contact us, we send them to the store up at the Tops Plaza and they're able to secure the discount. If there are only 11, that's disappointing, but
that's the information I have. I haven't personally verified it.
I-
It's kind of tricky to do so.
I know we've definitely fielded more than 11, like you and I, at least in the past, like couple of years. And then
I also know
before
of
that.
seniors get a month of full service. I'm sure the way the agreement reads that it's only supposed to be for basic cable, but that has not been the experience of our seniors.
Okay, well, I mean, if they've been getting the full month for everything they've subscribed to, I have no reason to believe that wouldn't continue. You know, he's saying it'll grandfather it in, so you know, I'd take him at his word and hold him to it. To be honest, you know, if that's
I
what
don't
they're
feel
saying.
comfortable. I feel like, why would we forfeit this benefit to our seniors?
Why are you for? What are you for?
Because you're only gonna allow it for those who are grandfathered in as opposed to
All right, well,
seniors.
I hate to be the 600-pound gorilla in the room, but the existing franchise agreement, which was sound, but I'm sorry, I can't get online here. The existing franchise agreement that was signed by the town and not the village actually does in its original wording specify that they're grandfathered in on that anyway. And that
I'm talking about the villages. The
village doesn't have an operative.
We definitely do not, but they definitely honor it. And is Spectrum saying that they're no longer gonna honor this old agreement? Have they drawn that line in the sand?
He will honor what they've got, but they won't bring anybody new in.
If we agree to a new agreement.
Right, but I think you'll find that I don't think anybody who
I
tries to
guarantee
apply
a
now.
senior could go up there tomorrow and get the discount, because we have seen that happen on numerous occasions. Okay. I mean, Bill, you've done work in this area as well.
I think we may have fielded a lot of calls, but a lot of those calls may not be qualifying calls. You know, someone who's paid, has its service, or actually follow up and do it. When I went in to get my discount, it was a bit of a hassle, but I did get, I believe, a full month's credit for my services. But having said all that, my question to you is, with the continued rate of cord cutting going on throughout the world, how does that impact this scenario that you're presenting to us?
I think first off, and I'd love Bob to speak to this as well. But
Yeah, I believe, you know, you were right. Maybe 10, 20 years down the road, there won't be any cable. Yeah, but I agree that the people are cutting their cords. Young people are not getting cable. You know, I have a hard time watching cable myself because of all the commercials.
it's huge now.
But we also plan to have it on Vimeo and be able to put that on social media. And the reason why we chose Vimeo is because it's not, we paid for it. It's something we had paid for. And YouTube has certain algorithms where they can give you strikes and copyright strikes and take you off air. So we are looking at, you know, making sure we have both internet access and social media presence.
So what I'm trying to get at.
No,
is if there are 10,000 subscribers in 2023, cable subscribers, in 3 years, there's half of that. How does that impact
I would love
revenue?
to speak to that,
Yeah.
specifically that. So one of the biggest things you find with any kind of streamed media, especially stuff that is free, isn't really free. It's funded by advertising, and they're going to throw as many adverts as you as they possibly can. And the idea is they want to keep your eyes on the screen so that you don't scroll away to something else. That's the way Facebook works. That's the way YouTube works. That's their business model. It is effectively surveillance advertising. And the algorithm makes it that your head is stuck in an echo chamber, that you won't receive anything that will broaden your experience. You're just going to receive everything that they think you are interested in, and that's it. So you can't control public access TV like that because it's not for sale, and it will never be for sale. In this day and age where so much misinformation is thrown around, I think it's an essential resource. Longevity, one of the things that we've got, as I said, we were approached by the Hudson Valley Crusaders, which is a United Women's Soccer United. I'm not sure what the exact organization is, but they're asking us to televise that and put that on Channel 3 for 24, which would be fantastic. We'd love to get more local, hyper-local interest stuff here. And this is a reason to not cut the cord. Because if you watch Channel 23 and it's in HD, you will not be bombarded by adverts. There won't be any there, you know? We want to get to be an equal place at the table. And we want to convince Spectrum, you know, everybody here has a vested interest that people continue to subscribe. I look at my thing and I subscribe to an awful lot of stream services. I've got like Netflix and Hulu and God knows what else. And the prices have gone up so much now, it would be cheaper for me to be on cable. It would be cheaper. So
I understand that. However, in terms of what you're able to bring in as revenue, is based upon cable subscribers. Is that correct?
If from the $16,714 that we're asking for, you can't run a TV station on that.
Sure.
But we aren't paying for rent.
That's also not the number either. Like the number of subscribers is not, you know, the town and the village are not generating $117,000 in franchise fees. That's like a dated number.
That's actually what's in the budget for this year, this fiscal year. I took it straight from the budget. So if that's wrong, I apologize. I'm working off your data. And I will give you chapter and verse of the line items. I've done the math here, you know, so I'm not just pulling figures out of my bum. So
well, I mean, when we received your proposal, I took a hard look at what we could actually receive from franchise fees, and the numbers were not what you were suggesting.
Well, is the budget wrong then? What was declared that was received in the previous year?
Well, that's precisely the point, is that the franchise fees about how much we receive and what we budget may be different. I don't know what number you were using, but it's
I've gone off your budget and the town's budget, nothing but. And I will share with you the math. I've got a spreadsheet.
If you look at the trajectory,
it doesn't have to be that way. There's a point where it's going to go the other way. And the thing is, I don't know that, but I also can't say that everybody's going to cut the cord. There's still an awful lot of people on it. And we're talking about a minuscule amount of money to pass on to a subscriber here. And
that is not how we run this village. We do not throw $16,000 around. We do not.
Yeah, especially just considering, you know, like you guys know, I'm like the concept of public access TV, all for it, absolutely. But just in terms of thinking of the stories we hear every single day about the people we represent in the village, you know, there are people who are not making ends meet. And, you know, like I want to make sure that the people that do have their television, you know, the older homeowners and tenants who are in Woodland Pond, basically that's what the numbers add up to. I want to support them for sure, but we have to do our math, like according to serving the people that actually you know, are here in the village, if that makes sense, you know,
How do you propose to do that?
what do you mean?
You say you have to survey the people in the village. How do you propose to do it?
No, like we have to serve
I'm sorry,
like
I
the
misheard you.
people that we, you know, that we represent. And, you know, just I'm just clarifying that's like how math works for municipalities and stuff, you know,
And
it's interesting too, how the percentage, by the way, of subscribers in like town outside village versus village do actually perfectly match census data for homeowners versus tenants.
It's probably not a coincidence, but
Yeah.
I mean, I've just worked on the figures that are freely available in the budget. That's all I've got. I've just done, you know, math there.
the other thing to keep in mind is that part of our responsibility, we feel like, is when we have to represent those who don't have a voice, who have the least. We have to think about them.
We
Really,
intend to give them
really
a platform to represent them.
I understand what you're saying, but we're talking about being fiscally responsible, and we don't raise taxes. We haven't raised taxes in a long time. The town has, but the village hasn't, because we are so, let me finish, please. Because we are so concerned about those who are having trouble, they are struggling. Okay, and as much as I love the idea and I want to support artists, I'm an artist, I get it. I have to balance needs versus wants, right? And you know, Tim's concerns about us losing something that we have currently, I share for our seniors. And you know, that's a lot of money for us. It may feel like not a lot of money for you, but it's a lot of money for us.
Okay, hold on. It's no money for you. If the additional franchise fee goes to the subscribers, and that, rather than getting subsumed into or absorbed into the general fund, is earmarked specifically for public access, it's of nil cost to you.
Okay, we have a fiduciary responsibility. It's 100% our responsibility to be thoughtful about where money is spent.
Yes, I get that.
So I really struggle with that as a response, that we can raise taxes, and it's exactly what it is. It's an additional fee.
No, it's a franchise fee.
Right, it's additional. You're right, it's an additional fee. It's just like we could also raise water rates too. We could also raise water rates and then move some of that money from the water fund and fund public access.
So to be clear,
Raising your parking fees?
We absolutely have to raise parking fees, and we could do that and fund a public access program. Sure. That's what you're suggesting.
No, I'm just saying you're concerned about the taxpayer. And these are fees, you know, by cable users. And the parking person also has to give you money because they're parking on village property, correct? So you did raise the parking fees, didn't you?
Absolutely, because we have to pay for things like health insurance and salaries and the cost to have meters and kiosks.
Because we couldn't afford, okay, to replace parking meters, because you can't fix them.
Well, I didn't want to really get it.
But it's the truth, we would have had to raise it even more. This was raising it less.
We're not making decisions in a vacuum without.
So coming back to public access television, which we're here, and again, I do thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you. If you'll permit me a moment of candor, I think it's fairly apparent. I think, was it Angela Mayo who said that, you know, when somebody shows you what they are, believe them. So I think it's fairly clear that you're not keen on supporting public access. Is that, am I putting words into your mouth?
Question. Because it's my understanding that we have asked you guys why you haven't been broadcasting our meeting, not just the village board, but village meeting, any village meeting. And you haven't been, but you want us to do stuff, but you don't want to reciprocate. Like, I don't.
We'll carry your stuff if you get it to us. But, you know, here's the thing. We worked, as well, you know, to tidy up the broadcast capability upstairs. And then we were promised by yourself, and I have a witness who was in the room also, a studio space at Village Hall. But that didn't come about simply because space became at a premium because Village Hall is frankly falling apart. So that didn't happen. We put a lot of time and effort into making something which is really easy to use, tidied up that rack that you have up there, and got it all set that somebody just had to come plug some microphones in and press a button. You moved away from that model. When the pandemic went and we asked you, please keep us in the loop, tell us what's going on, we'll put it on channel 23. We got it's on a Google Doc. That's what we got, you know? So again, we can be at each other's throat, or we can work to help one another. And as I see it, public access television is in probably what is the most inclusive communities in the entire United States of America, and off the chart creativity would be the perfect place for something like this. And we've worked so chuffing hard to get where we are, but we've done it with one hand tied behind our back. And again, we've got one hand tied behind our back here. You're telling me, I mean, I can only go on what I'm told, you know, I can't pull Spectrum subscriber figures. All I can do is extrapolate data. I'm told by somebody who could be lying to me, but I don't believe he is, because I haven't seen any other indication of that, that the number of people currently claiming subscriber discount, senior subscriber discount within the New Paltz community is negligible. It's a small amount. And it's, you know, it's not a cost issue. So it's, if you can work it out, you know, if you want to tell me, go back to him and say it's non-negotiable, we have to have the subscriber discount, I'll ask him that, but I don't know where we're going with that, because I don't know how you can do something you can't do. And that's what he's saying, is it's because it's so ridiculously ad hoc, it's impossible to set up a discount code for.
From our experience, if a senior goes to that location up at the Tops Plaza, they will get the discount.
And if they don't, you call Alex and he steps in and does what he does.
Exactly.
And he's continuing to say he will do that. And, you know, I want to move things forwards. I want this, you know, but if you're not interested in you know, supporting public access television, this is a complete waste of space and time and effort.
We have numerous responsibilities, numerous things that we have to pay for, including Village Hall that's falling apart. So I think addressing some of those responsibilities are probably.
Listen, we can walk and chew gum. You know, we can do both. This is not a big ask.
And we do.
This is not a big ask.
Walk and chew gum.
Ergo, we do not, because you're not supporting us, and I feel very unsupported at this moment in time. Is that
we
not?
we haven't seen a liaison at any of our meetings for, I don't know how long.
You know, it's we're not even a rung
Do
on the
not
ladder.
return our emails. What are we supposed to do?
I just want to speak to it for a moment, because as a new member, I just feel, you know, a bit discouraged, because I truly think this could be something that amplifies your voices. You know, I want to work with the town and with the, you know, not-for-profit organizations who are here helping people on the ground. But I truly think that this is something that the seniors, if we opened it to a public hearing and it explained what is the change, that they would be excited by what we're offering when it comes to new original content made by members of the community, that this could really open a door to something that's better than anything you see on television for local New Paltz people, that is truly about our area, for our area. And I think it's a small ask to try to get this, at least I just want to open the dialogue so we can figure out how best we can move forward with this. Because, I've been, after several months of meetings and appreciating all that you guys have to do, we want to be an ally to you so that we can, we all want the same thing.
So in your presentation, you spoke about the high school and the college creating content. Have you been able to work with either of those and upload any of their content on 23?
Yeah, so I did speak to the president of the Hawks Club, and the college, the high school currently isn't running their club, but they did have an NPZ TV Facebook group, and they used to create TV in that school. So we'd love to bring that back to life. But I've spoken with the head of the digital media chair at the college, and as well as the clubs who are involved, because I'm a very active member of the alumni, and I see all the amazing content that comes out in terms of documentaries about the local area and television series about what this community is all about some of our favorite local members, about issues that are important to people. And I think creating this public discourse in a visual medium is what the future is all about. That's what will prevent people from cutting the cable, is if there's exciting, content with the school and the high school in talks with us. But the reason we haven't moved forward is because we haven't had an HD platform. And as if any artist will tell you, you don't want to see your work on screen in, a quarter of the quality that it's provided in. And that's been a major roadblock since I joined this board, is how can we get HD on the television? That's step one. Because I'm already working on getting us social media accounts. We already have an Instagram, the TikTok, Facebook, and everything. But how can we look the best on the platform where we're supposed to be accessible? The Spectrum platform.
So that's a Spectrum issue, right? The town's franchise agreement speaks to how Spectrum is supposed to provide equipment so that you can broadcast on 23. Right. So what does that have to do with the Village of New Paltz?
We need to.
So either they're providing you with the equipment, or they're in violation of their franchise agreement.
All right. With all due respect, Mayor, at this point, and you've been there and you've been to enough discussions, and I've seen you getting into a tiz with the other people, the lawyers who came last time we were on a Zoom call with them, where it turned into they accused you of wanting to go to a therapy session. It was an absolute. I'm not going to swear because we're on public TV, but it was a fiasco.
We're actually not on public TV. That was really an ironic slip.
There's no irony, man.
We're not on public TV.
It could happen if you work with us. If you'll work with us. So with all due respect, we've actually got somebody that we can work with. All right, but we have to come to the.
So then get the equipment that they're supposed to give you.
Then give us the authority.
You already have the authority. You already have your franchise agreement.
We do not have a franchise agreement.
The franchise agreement says that they're supposed to provide you with modern equipment.
No, it doesn't.
I'm pretty sure it says something similar to that.
It does not say that. They are in absolutely no way obligated to give us anything.
Just have to give us this thing, which is a standard definition. Analog signal.
With all due respect, I'm a volunteer, right? Nobody's paying me for my time here. I'm a volunteer. Joe's a volunteer. Bob's volunteered more time than he gets paid for, believe me. We put our own personal resources, money, equipment, hardware into this, all right? We believe in it. We're working to try and make this, but we're doing it with one hand tied behind our back. And I've got to throw it right at your feet, sir. Because we can't go anywhere unless we can negotiate a franchise agreement. And you're coming up with.
We don't want to negotiate away the senior discount.
Okay, I'll go back to him and say but will you agree to everything else we're asking for?
Absolutely not.
Well, then
absolutely not. Are we going to raise how much individuals have to pay to have a cable connection and then use that additional revenue?
So to be quite clear, you are not prepared to support public access television.
Use
for the
whatever
record.
Soundbite
for
you need.
The record.
Use whatever soundbite you need.
Thank you for your time, there.
You have in the budget for public access.
Have you invoiced us for a service?
I have tried to get you.
Have you invoiced us for a service? Can you describe why? That's the thing, is we're audited, right? We can't just write checks. We have to write checks for these things, purchase orders.
When we had the COVID epidemic, I went on volunteer status, so I wasn't charging any. When we went out of COVID emergency, I asked the town, I asked you, if we could resume paying for.
And we haven't had any village content.
You've never talked to us. You don't even.
That's not true at all.
Meetings, public, and it came up. Haven't committed to, spending money for a new system. Our meeting room is moving around a lot, but the reason why this is the way this is, and that I've been running this stuff off the YouTube, is because I never got an answer. So I just went along with it because I got work to do, sorry y'all, but it takes time.
She had emailed you, Anton.
Yeah.
On more than one occasion.
And on more than one occasion, I've responded to Autumn, and I have addressed everything you've ever asked me to.
But not about any of this.
Well, if you like copying that again, I mean, I'm happy to come and put a camera in your face, but we have to have a platform on which to put it there. So we're at an impasse, but it seems quite candid to me that you have no interest in supporting public access television.
Well, I don't feel supported. I feel like you want to be argumentative, you want to point fingers.
You haven't had the decency, sir, to reply to my email. And I asked you 3 times.
We responded publicly that we were not interested in renegotiating a franchise agreement.
Prior to that meeting, which you gave me less than 1.5 hours notice to be at. That, sir, is not how you conduct business, with all due respect.
Thank you with all due respect. Thank you for your counsel.
Unbelievable. I'll be putting a foil in for the $41 you expended on public access TV the year before last. You didn't know that.
Okay, next agenda item. So we have a grant opportunity working with the Benjamin Center. So we signed an agreement to go ahead and participate with the Benjamin Center. And it was basically a letter of intent, which hopefully will get submitted, and then we'll have the opportunity to apply for this grant program. I don't have any other details to share on that right now.
Okay, so far I like what I'm hearing.
So I move that we officially agree to participate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the next item is, Alex, I'll let you take this.
Next item is our annual resolution of the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees memorializing the designation of November 20th, 2023 as Transgender Day of Remembrance and the month of November as Transgender Awareness Month. Whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance was founded by transgender advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith as a vigil to honor her memory of Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. The vigil commemorated all the transgender people lost to violence that year and began an important memorial that has become the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance. And whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance is an annual observance on November 20th that honors the memory of the transgender and gender nonconforming and gender diverse, or TGNC, people whose lives were lost in acts of hate, acts of anti-transgender, anti-gender nonconforming violence that year. And whereas according to data compiled from the Trans Lives Matter website, the Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, and the media coverage linked throughout the report shared by all 3 resources, there were at least 335 reported violent deaths of TGNC people globally in the past year, specifically between October 1st, 2022 and September 30th, 2023. And whereas at least 41 of those reported violent deaths of trans and gender diverse folks in the past year were in the United States alone. At least 34 of the total violent deaths of TGNC people in the US this past year were murders. And
Whereas their names are Sherlyn Marjorie, 35-year-old Latinx trans woman who was murdered by her partner in Albuquerque, New Mexico on September 26, 2023. Yoko, a 30-year-old Black non-binary person who was murdered by hit and run in New Orleans, Louisiana on September 19th of this year. Alexa Andreevna Sakova, a 34-year-old trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Palm Bay, Florida on September 8th. Charm Wilson, a 32-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by a hit and run in Bedford Heights, Cleveland on September 8th. Breasia Banks, a Black non-binary person using she, her pronouns, was murdered by her partner in Arizona on September 5th. Dakota Cody Lawrence, a 25-year-old trans man, was murdered by a hit and run in Weirton, West Virginia on September 5th. Thomas or Tom Robertson, a 28-year-old Black gender non-conforming person, was murdered by gunshot in Calumet City, Indiana on August 17th of this year. Lovely Page, a 54-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Chicago, Illinois on August 16th. Luis Angel Diaz Castro, a 22-year-old Latino trans man, was murdered by his ex-domestic partner in San Juan, Puerto Rico on August 12th. Dolly Goings, a 27-year-old trans woman whose cause of death was not reported, still is not, was found deceased on the roadside in Eugene, Oregon on August 10th of this year. Devani Jaray Johnson, a 28-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Los Angeles, California on August 7th of this year. Camden Ryder, a 21-year-old trans man who was murdered by gunshot by his partner while 8 months pregnant in Winter Haven, Florida on July 21st of this year. Elena Esser Adam, a trans woman whose age and life circumstances remain unknown, was murdered by a cause still unknown in Dallas, Texas on July 11th. Bernielle Mary Mora, a 26-year-old trans woman of color who was murdered with no other details reported yet in her home in the Bronx on July 6th this summer. Jacob Williamson, an 18-year-old trans man who was murdered by a man he had arranged to meet for a date in Pageland, South Carolina on June 30th, 2023. Chanel Yuvita Perez Ortiz, a 29-year-old Latina trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Carolina, Puerto Rico on June 25th. Aisha Davis, a 34-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Highland Park, Michigan on June 3rd. Om Gandhi, a 16-year-old trans woman who was murdered by gunshot by her abusive father in Salt Lake City, Utah on May 16th. Lakendra Andrews, a 26-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Dallas, Texas on April 29th. Banco Paso, a 24-year-old Black trans man who was murdered by gunshot by a security officer at Walgreens in San Francisco, California on April 27th. Rashida Coco Dedal Williams, a 35-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Atlanta, Georgia on April 19th. Ashley Burton, a 37-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Atlanta, Georgia on April 11th. Tasia Woodland, an 18-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Mechanicsville, Maryland on March 24th. Kashay Henderson, a 31-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on February 25th. Imanowitahu Zaki, a 26-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Louisville, Kentucky on February 3rd of this year. Ivory Nicole Smith, a 27-year-old Black trans woman whose cause of death still remains unreported, was found dead in her home in San Francisco, California on January 24th, 2023, and the case remains open. Unique Banks, a 20-year-old Latinx trans woman, was murdered by gunshot during a home invasion in which her mother was also killed in Chicago, Illinois on January 23rd of this year. Maria Jose Rivera, a 22-year-old Latinx trans woman who was murdered by her intimate partner in a murder-suicide at their home in Houston, Texas on January 21st of this year. Olivia Snow, a 47-year-old AAPI trans woman who was found dead in her hotel room in the city, New York City, on January 19th of this year, and her death remains under investigation. Manuel Tortuguita Terran, a 26-year-old indigenous Venezuelan non-binary person, was murdered by police who shot them at least 57 times while raiding the Defend Atlanta Forest Stop Cop City encampment in Atlanta, Georgia on January 18th of this year. Casey Johnson, a 27-year-old trans woman, was murdered by severe beating and found in Savannah River after going missing in Wilmington, North Carolina on January 13th. Jasmine Starr Mack, a 36-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by stabbing in Washington, D.C. on January 7th of this year. Kaylee Lovelight, a 27-year-old Latina trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Phoenix, Arizona on December 17th of 2022. Marquis, or MJ Max Jackson, a 33-year-old Black trans man, was murdered by beating in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on December 14th, 2022. That was their birthday. Destiny Howard, a 23-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Macon, Georgia on December 9th, 2022. Day Rodas, a 27-year-old trans woman, died of a drug poisoning, was found on the roadside in Malibu, California on December 1st, 2022. Her death remains under investigation as a homicide. Diamond Jackson McDonald, a 27-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in her mother's home in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on Thanksgiving, November 24th, 2022. Daniel Davis Aston, a 28-year-old trans man, was murdered in the Club Q shooting in Colorado Springs on November 19th, 2022. Kelly Loving, a 20-year-old trans woman, was murdered in the Club Q shooting in Colorado Springs on November 19th, 2022. Emma Borhanian, a 31-year-old trans woman, was murdered by gunshot in Vallejo, California on November 13th, 2022. Tiffany Banks, a 25-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered by gunshot in Miami, Florida on October 1st, 2022. Whereas following the introduction of the Transgender Day of Remembrance Resolution of 2022, the lives of Morgan Moore, Kylie Manali, London Star were reported to have been lost to acts of violence between October 1st, 2021 and September 30th, 2022. Whereas on the eve of Transgender Day of Remembrance in 2022, two trans people we noted above, Kelly Loving and Daniel Aston, were murdered alongside three others, Derek Crump, Ashley Paugh, and Raymond Greenvance, and dozens more were injured inside Club Q in an act of anti-LGBTQIA+ extremism. Whereas Colin Smith, a cisgender ally, was murdered this year while defending a trans friend from an attack in Portland, Oregon on July 22nd. And Michelle Dion Peacock, a cisgender Black woman, was murdered by a neighbor who believed that she was trans in Richmond, Indiana on June 30th. And she was in recovery from cancer at that time. Whereas we say at least this many transgender and gender nonconforming people died victims of anti-trans hate because too often these deaths go unreported, underreported, or misreported. And whereas additionally, at least 58 trans and gender nonconforming individuals died by suicide in the same time frame, 19 of whom were in the US. Whereas almost half of all transgender people in the United States will attempt suicide at least once, and over 1 in 20 will attempt suicide each year, a rate that is almost 10 times higher than the rest of the United States population. And whereas violence against transgender Americans disproportionately impacts transgender women of color. And whereas Black transgender women are the most targeted group to experience violence in the United States. And whereas transgender Americans face barriers to healthcare, such as lack of health insurance, stigma and discrimination, higher rates of unemployment, and in an increasingly higher number of states, legal barriers to accessing medical care. And whereas transgender people disproportionately suffer from higher rates of homelessness, with reports suggesting as many as 1/3 of transgender women and 1/2 of trans and gender nonconforming women who are Black, Middle Eastern, multiracial, or undocumented have ever experienced homelessness. And whereas according to the New York State Legislature's Trans Day of Remembrance resolution for this year, 1 in 5 transgender people in the United States have been denied housing, and 11% have been evicted for their gender identity. Furthermore, 1 in 12 transgender people report being kicked out of their family homes, and 1 in 5 transgender people have been homeless at some point in their lives. And whereas a 2020 study conducted by the Center for American Progress shows that transgender people continue to face discrimination and marginalization in society, specifically data from that report suggests that it's dangerous to be transgender or gender nonconforming in public today in the United States. 62% of transgender people experienced discrimination in the last year of that study. More than one quarter or 25% of transgender people say they have endured significant psychological harm due to such discrimination. 50% of transgender people had experienced discrimination in public spaces, and 2/3 of transgender people changed the way they dress and their mannerisms just to avoid discrimination. And whereas the continued introduction of anti-transgender legislation has fueled violence against transgender Americans, whereas efforts to restrict access to gender-affirming healthcare has stripped many transgender people of access to medically necessary care, it's led to a spike in poor mental health and suicidality among transgender youth and adults. It's increased bullying and assault in schools and left parents afraid their children may be removed from their homes because they support their transgender child. Therefore, be it resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees on this date, November 29th, 2023, joins communities around the world in a moment of remembrance of transgender lives lost to violence in the past year. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees urges our representatives on the county, state, and federal levels to act to protect and preserve the lives of all transgender and gender nonconforming people, though inclusive legislation and policies that treat everyone through inclusive legislation policies that treat everyone with dignity and respect. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees wishes to help raise the visibility of transgender people and illuminate the issues the trans community faces by reaffirming our declaration of November as Transgender Awareness Month. Be it further resolved that our clerk will send a copy of this resolution to U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Schumer, Congressman Ryan, Governor Hochul, Senator Hinchey, Assemblywoman Shrestha, County Executive Metzger, and all our other elected officials. And I motion that we adopt this resolution. All in favor?
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Item number 8, 2023 Community Development Block Grant Award regarding the DEC consent order compliance. I move that we approve items A through C. All in favor? Item number 9, I move that we approve the fire department's request to sell Freightliner E1 conversion attack fire engine listed for auction with absolute action and reality per the memo from the fire chief. The final auction bid was for $17,800. We need a motion to ratify the declaration as surplus and approve the sale at the highest bid price. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I move that we I move bills and claims. All in favor? Aye. Any planning board liaison update that we want to share?
County Planning Board meets on Wednesday. There are no referrals for New Paltz on the agenda. The last planning board meeting, we had numerous fire calls on that during meeting time, so I was unable to attend.
Well. No update from the zoning board of appeals. They did not meet in November. And then we have a mediation statement. So we're working with attorneys to try to address the expenses related to the February of 2020 contamination with heating oil in reservoir number 4. The board all received that mediation statement. That's related to litigation, so it's not a publicly available document, but I need to ask the board publicly that we are okay with signing on to that mediation statement. That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And why doesn't anyone just call me tomorrow? I can give you a mediation update if you have any questions. So I'm not going to go into exec session. Anything else we want to add? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.